Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the University Council of Jamaica in partnership with the Commonwealth of Learning Distance Education Standards webinar. Before we go into our morning's proceedings, I'm going to ask Dr. Yvonne Dawkins, Associate Vice President Academics for University Council of the Caribbean, to open in a word of prayer. Dr. Yvonne Dawkins.
Thank you. Good morning. Colleagues, as we prepare for the day, please join me in a moment of reflection and prayer. Psalm 25, 4 and 5. Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me your path. Guide me in your truth and teach me. For you are God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. Let us pray. God, our teacher, you're always teaching us through your word how to become our better selves. We thank you for the privilege that we have as educators to teach others and so contribute to our societies by enhancing development through supporting learning. We thank you for the many ways in which we have developed our craft to be more responsive to the needs of students and more relevant to the challenges and opportunities in our environment. We thank you for the technology available to us in this age that allows us a wider and more comprehensive reach. As we continue these discussions on distance education standards, we welcome your presence among us. We bring our various experiences, creativity, insights to the table. We also bring our curiosity, our limitations, our questions to the conversation. As we give and take from this process, we pray that the time spent will be productive time, a time of learning, a time of building networks, a time of strengthening our craft. We cover in prayer the presenters and the technical support. We commit the proceedings of this workshop to you and ask your blessing on our effort. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Dawkins, for setting the tone for the proceedings for today. On behalf of University Council of Jamaica and Commonwealth of Learning, let me use this opportunity to say a very warm Monday morning, a very bright Monday morning to everyone, and we're very happy that you were able to join us today for our webinar series. We trust that as you stay with us for this morning's session and the session this afternoon, that indeed you will find it fruitful and beneficial. Please, as we go through the day, ensure you make your notes and be prepared for the question and answer sessions, so that any question, any area that you need to be clarified, clarification will be provided. And again, we must apologize for the late start. We're having some little challenges there, but we will get back on track for the morning's proceedings. At this time, I'm going to invite Professor the Honorable Errol Morrison, the chairman, of the University Council of Jamaica, to give his welcome. Professor Honorable Errol Morrison. Okay, I'm not seeing Professor Morrison. All right, we'll move on to Dr. Marriott Newman. She's an education specialist with Commonwealth of Learning and the Virtual University for Small States of the Commonwealth. So we will now receive a greetings from Dr. Marriott Newman. Over to the technical team.
Greetings from the Commonwealth of Learning in Vancouver, Canada, and congratulations to the University Council of Jamaica on the launch of the revised standards for distance education. COL is delighted to participate in this launch and to support the series of online workshops that will follow. COL works with governments and institutions across the Commonwealth as they seek to improve access to learning opportunities by making use of distance education and technologies. COL also recognises that for distance learning to be successful and credible, and for learners to gain maximum benefit from it, quality is key. Distance education programs must be recognised as delivering consistently high standards of teaching and learning, and that requires quality assurance and policies that lay out the standards to which an institution will adhere. The 2022 UCJ standards for distance education reflect the passion and commitment of a range of Jamaican educators from different institutions and contexts, each of whom brought unique areas of expertise and valuable perspectives to the standards being launched today. The launch of these standards is timely. The magnitude of the COVID-19 crisis caught Jamaica and the rest of the world off guard. Education and training were disrupted, and in the pivot to deploy rapid online learning solutions, institutions have had to rethink, retrain, and in some cases, reinvent how they engage in teaching and learning and how they ensure quality. It is clear that online and distance education has moved from the margins to mainstream. So there is no better time than now for institutions and educators in Jamaica to familiarize themselves with the standards and begin to use them to strengthen their institutions and their products. The workshops provide an opportunity as a community to examine and interpret the standards, discuss the implications of each standard, and for leaders to assess where their institutions are in relation to each standard. The launch and the workshops have been made possible because of a productive partnership that COL shares with the UCJ. And I would like to thank the UCJ team, led by Ms Althea Heron and Ms Karen Gale, for their dedication and support, and express appreciation to Ms Sandra Bloomfield, who will facilitate the workshops on COL's behalf. Finally, I know that I echo UCJ's sentiments when I say that it is our hope at COL that these standards will contribute substantially to enriching the quality of teaching and learning in Jamaica's post-secondary institutions, and by extension, enrich the learning experience for thousands of current and potential learners across the island. Thank you.
Okay, not sure what happened, but we just want to say thanks to Dr. Marriott Newman for bringing greetings from Commonwealth of Learning. At this time, we're going to be having a welcome from Dr. Jeanette Bartley-Brand. She is a chair of the Distance Education Committee at UCJ, who has put together or spearheaded a team that have put together the standards that we are launching today. So Dr. Bartley-Brand will now give us her.
Good day to all who are participating online and in person in this historical series of events relating to the launch of the UCJ distance education standards in 2022. On Friday, June 17, 2022, the official launch was declared by Professor the Honorable Errol Morrison. And this was followed by the first webinar, which focused on establishing and maintaining a quality governance framework. The distance education standards are guidelines reflecting quality assurance principles, procedures, and best practices designed to ensure reliability, functionality, credibility, and authenticity in the development and delivery of online distance education. The standards are applicable to our nation, wider Caribbean, and the globe. First developed in 2014 by a team led by Professor Elsa Leorini, these standards have been revised by a special committee handpicked in 2020 by the University Council of Jamaica to undertake this important task for higher education. We want to recognize the following persons who comprise the committee and worked hard over the last 2 years and 3 months. Members include Mrs. Avery Thompson from the Northern Caribbean University, Dr. Eraldine Williams Shakespeare from the University of Technology, Jamaica, Dr. Schontal Moore from the University of the West Indies, Mona, Dr. Merritt Newman from the Commonwealth of Learning, Virtual University for Small States of the Commonwealth, Mrs. Shanique Walker-Carty from the Council of Community Colleges, Mrs. Erica Simmons from the Caribbean Maritime University, Mrs. Janet Clacking from the Caribbean Examinations Council, Mrs. Sandra Bloomfield, who is our lead project consultant for the launch and the webinar series. Special mention must be made of Mrs. Rita Smith, who has joined us on the committee. She's from the Shortwood Training College. And we want to recognize also Mrs. Karen Gale, the Standards Development Officer, the Senior Standards Development Officer from the University Council of Jamaica. Together, we have worked and collaborated with institutional leaders and practitioners who have provided feedback over the years on the various drafts that we shared and enabled us to incorporate ideas for more extensive uses of technology in the delivery of teaching and learning. So we want to just appreciate all persons who are joining us today to continue the journey as we now move to the new stage of implementing the official distance education standards. Please feel free to share more ideas, to raise your questions and suggestions so that together we can make these standards practical, applicable, and relevant to our needs in the higher education community. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thanks very much, Dr. Bartley-Brand, the chairperson for the Distance Education Standards Committee. At this time, we are going to be inviting Ms. Tamika Wilson, a member of the UCJ team, and she's going to be introducing our first presenter. Ms. Tamika Wilson, over to you.
It is my honor to introduce this morning's speakers, Ms. Sandra Bloomfield. Ms Sandra Bloomfield has devoted 30 years to the education and the training of students both locally and regionally. She is a certified expert technology integration trainer and has led the development of several technology integration projects and programs. Her involvement in computer science and education technology has landed her roles such as coordinator for information technology with the e-learning Jamaica project, head of computer science department at the Micah University College, online director at the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, chief examiner for digital media with the Caribbean Examination Council, and project consultant for several regional technology-oriented projects, including this very project. Ms. Bloomfield is a PhD candidate with the University of Technology, Jamaica. And Dr. Schontal Moore will be assisting Ms. Bloomfield this morning. Dr. Moore is a lecturer in language and literature for the University of the West Indies Mona Campus School of Education, where she is also the graduate coordinator. Dr. Moore is a core member of the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning and represents the UA on the University Council of Jamaica's Distance Education Standards Committee. Her research interests include blended and online education, English language teaching in Creole-influenced contexts, and teacher development in higher education. She served as team lead for the K-12 Blended Learning and Online Strategies Teacher Training Project, a collaboration of UNESCO, UNICEF, Blackboard, and the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning. This project saw over 12,000 educators being trained in the Caribbean earlier this year. Ms. Bloomfield, Dr. Moore, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tamika. Good morning, everyone. The Honorable Favor Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, Professor the Honorable Errol Morrison, Chairman of the UCJ, Dr. Merritt Newman, Education Specialist, Commonwealth of Learning, Mrs. Althea Aaron, Executive Director of the University Council of Jamaica, specially invited guests, colleagues across the education institutions in Jamaica, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me start by sharing a small video, a very short video that I extracted from the University of Westchester website.
Imagine you walk into an on-campus classroom. You take a seat in one of the neatly arranged desks facing the board. While you wait for the instructor to arrive, you chat with other students. Once the instructor arrives, they begin to teach you content using a lecture. Sometimes the instructor calls on students to answer questions, but most of the time you are a recipient, not a participant, in the learning process. Sometimes the instructor covers material too quickly for you to fully grasp it, and other times the instructor is moving too slowly to keep your attention. Your learning experience is limited to the time, space, and speed of that classroom. This is the traditional face-to-face model of school. Now imagine that you enter your own personal classroom at any time, day or night, that works with your schedule. While no one else is physically present in that space with you, you see your computer or mobile device and know that you can connect with classmates and your instructor with just a few mouse clicks, keystrokes, or taps of a button using online tools like discussion boards, email, or video chat. You can move through the class content at the pace that works for you. Instead of feeling the pressure to instantly understand everything the professor shares during a lesson, you know that you have the opportunity to review multimedia lesson materials as many times as you would like. Instead of being put on the spot to answer questions in class, you can take your time to think through and more fully form responses to questions before you post them on a discussion board. All of the learning materials and information you need to be successful in the course are available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire course. This is online learning.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Moore and I will be taking you through the standards to transition to quality online learning in higher education from a Jamaican context.
Okay, colleagues from across Jamaica and the region and possibly the globe, just want to say good morning and welcome. We're really happy to be sharing with you this morning the standards as discussed and packaged and made available by the University Council of Jamaica, UCJ, and in support by the Commonwealth of Learning. We want to share the standards with you so that they can become more accessible for you to operationalize them within your tertiary level institutions. For many of us, the standards remain an object in the distance. It's a resource that we see, but we really don't take the time out to unpack and go through the standards. And so these webinar sessions or series, they are aimed at making the standards real, palpable documents that you will integrate in your curricula to ensure that your institutions have quality in terms of online / distance / blended education. So this morning, Ms. Bloomfield and I, we will be sharing with you on a couple of the standards that you see on the screen there. We're going to be looking at standards criterion 2, academic programs, curriculum materials. We're also going to be looking at criterion 3, which addresses learner services and support. We will spend some time too on criterion 4 in terms of learner engagement, assessment, achievement, and satisfaction. And then we will wrap up with the 5th criterion, which will look at technology services. So hope that you're ready to unpack each of these so that you can understand what they mean and you can think about how you can operationalize them in your particular institution so that your students, your academic staff, they engage in quality throughout their online education. So then the objectives of our workshop are there on the screen. We will definitely be ensuring that by the time you come to the end, each of us here should be able to apply the standards for distance education to the practices in their respective institution. You will also be able to assess the status of online and distance education within your institution. And finally, you should be able to guide your institution into online practices that are in alignment with the standards for distance education. So those are the aims and objectives of this morning's webinar. I now turn to Sandra to talk about the importance of the standards.
Thank you. All right, so earlier in the week, last week, Friday, on the 17th, the Honorable Minister, as well as Dr. Bartley Bryan, among other speakers, established the importance of the standards in terms of using them as a guide and measurement for where we are in terms of our practices in our online engagement. I really want to just reiterate some of these and to look at why it is so befitting that UCJ, our local quality assurance body, should roll out these standards. So given the pandemic, there was a rise in e-learning right across the globe. Everyone had to try to find a way, all education institutions, to meet with their students in one form or another. Some persons were sending emails, some were packaging physical materials and sending out. We were all struggling to continue the teaching and learning process. In fact, some schools closed for quite some time. And so in Jamaica, at the tertiary level, the UCJ, it is their goal. They responded to the call for compilation of standards to set clear and measurable goals for operations in this modality. Tertiary institutions should therefore use the standards to inform their practice and to measure our online education achievement. And I have this graph that you're looking at, extracted from the World Economic Forum, dated January 27, 2022. and I wanted to do a poll, but don't think that was really set up as yet. Was it, Mr. Technician? No, I think not. But how many of us do believe that the delivery of education at the tertiary level will actually return to what it was like in the post-pandemic period? Okay, great. Please respond by selecting your choice here, yes or no. Do you believe the delivery of education at the tertiary level will return to its post-pandemic format? And I'll give you 30 seconds to submit your response to that. And I'll indicate when we will take the results of our poll. All right, so here we have this World Economic Forum chart that they shared on their platform, looking at the global growth in online education. And if you notice here that the pandemic, which impacted us in the 2019, and look at what has happened in 2019 to 2021. There's been an exponential growth in the take-up of online education. In fact, Coursera alone reported that they had 20 million new registered students. So for those of us who think that we will be going back to what it was like in our education environment in the pre-pandemic era, I don't think we will be going back. And the statistics show that we cannot go back. We will not go back. When man's mind is stretched to new horizon, it never goes back to where it's coming from. And we have seen what the technology is capable of achieving. We have seen how much convenience and how much our students enjoy the flexibility and the convenience of this online education. They want it, they crave it. And a lot of students and lecturers who are never believers of the technology, they are now on board and they're saying, I don't want to go back to face-to-face classes. I don't wish to be on campus. And it's not a matter of the virus not being here anymore. It is the flexibility. I can now work and support myself. I can work and support my family and still be able to access my courses, do my assessment, etc., etc. So in looking at the standards 2 to 5 in this presentation, we're going to be looking at the academic program and materials, ensuring that they are data-driven, that they evolve with time and they change with technology and the world of work. We cannot, the old adage of teachers packaging their notes and having them for years, it can no longer work. There's no space in the online environment to accommodate that. The material themselves, while having to be upgraded, then the way they're put forward on the online platform, it is so different from what we have in the face-to-face environment. And many of us as practitioners, we try to take our face-to-face experience and to put it in the online space. So we have 3-hour classes. We try to have 2-hour tutorials. And those things just cannot work for the online space, where we will need to meet the students at their level and ensure that we incorporate their experience, avoid exhaustion of both the lecturer and the students. And so the way in which the methodologies that we employ will need to change. And later on in our presentation, I will touch on the TPAC and SAMR models for technology integration. So you will see where the theory is taking us and why it is that we cannot package our material or deliver our lectures in the way that we did before. In fact, gone are those days when we truly lectured, right? Now we have to apply, because the reading is already on the LMS. And so we have to help the students to apply what is there and to be able to incorporate and integrate it in their own situations. All right, so I'm going to ask Dr. Newman. Schontal, please go ahead. Look at the academic programs, curricula, and material.
Okay, thanks, Sandra. All right, colleagues, we want to delve now into each of the standards that we have here, focusing on, we're going to start out with academic program, curricula, and materials. And remember now that, yes, it is a document, but you have to now make the document real in your institution. So what UCJ's document is supposed to do is to guide institutions to focus their mission, to plan their curricula, and to ensure that they have quality development for staff so that the delivery and evaluation of instruction in distance education remains high. So the scope for the academic program, curriculum, materials, we're saying that we want to ensure that when you look back at your own internal standards and documents guiding you, that you are going to revamp them so that they reflect the mission and goals of your institution. The learning outcomes are clearly stated and indicate the benefits for reasonably diligent learners. And they are clear, they possess, there are clear processes and procedures for program and curricular development and approval. You'll find too that the distance education standards, they touch on the very same standards that you would have for the face-to-face programs, but you are looking now to assure quality, you're looking to assure balance to make sure that whatever is offered in the face-to-face programs, that the same quality is achieved in the online version of the programs as well. All right, so then, in terms of the criteria for standards, we want to suggest that for the institutions that when you offer your academic programs, that they are aligned to the goals and missions of the institution. And by that, we're referring to a consistency. We're looking to see that you have the very clear processes and procedures for the programs spelled out. Yes, you would normally have these in paper form. You would discuss these in the classrooms with your students. And we want to ensure that the online students, a student who is accessing the material via blended modality, that this student is also getting the very same indicators of quality. And when UCJ assesses your institution in terms of how it aligns itself with the distance education standards, the evidence that we're looking for, we want to see that your program design and development plans are there, your mission statement, the institution's teaching and learning plans, the curriculum development policies, all of these are reflected. And also it will follow through in terms of minutes in your meetings, your academic board meetings, and those kinds of things. All right, so that's in terms of the academic program. We want to look as well at how clearly defined are the learning outcomes for all of your programs, all right? In terms of learning outcomes, we want to see that you are stating very explicitly for your online and distance or blended learners that the outcomes are clear in terms of the knowledge that they need to acquire, the attitude, skills, and the competencies, all right? Because they need to know what is it that is expected of the online learner, the distance, the person in the distance being educated. Also, we want to ensure that within your institutions, you're looking at the needs of your learners. You're checking to see that these needs are attainable, and they're attainable through electronic and or other kinds of distance modalities. So that's an important indicator for your institution to know how closely aligned you are with the quality standards that UCJ has established. Thirdly, looking at the learning outcomes, and we're checking to see if they are designed and developed based on the data on the learner's profile of needs, the learner's expectations, and learning style preferences. So it's a lot of things that we need to, when we look back at our current programs and we examine the curricula within the different programs and the materials and the resources that are being used, we want to see that these are clear indicators that they are present. And once they're present and obvious, or they are made available to the online learner, then you know that your institution is on the right track towards accomplishing these particular criteria or the standards here under the academic programs and curricula strand. And then in terms of the evidence, we are looking to see how you revise, reflect on your program and course documents. So you will need to definitely revisit some of your handbooks. You will need to do some survey analyses to get a sense of where you are, how learners are, experiencing the curricula so far. And the beauty about having gone through COVID is that it gave all institutions, higher institutions, the opportunity to kind of pilot, a set of standards and criteria. And if it is that a tertiary institution was not abiding by or using the UCJ standards as a guideline, now is an opportunity for you to go back and to revamp and to do that kind of analysis, do that check among learners, among faculty, to see how close your institution was or has been in terms of keeping good and quality-based standards. So certainly the curriculum development will need to be taken into account, the online presence. Definitely we need to get a sense of how the learners are experiencing teaching and learning within an online space. So this is just a small part of this strand on the standards of academic programs, curriculum, materials. It is a lot more has been developed and unpacked in terms of this strand here. And so we're going to invite you to go to the UCJ website, pull down the fuller document of the standards so that you can go through in a more comprehensive way the other criteria of the standards under the academic program and curriculum material. So just a bit now, and we will expect you to go through and unpack a little bit more. I want to now turn over to the second set of standards criteria that we're going to be looking at, and that is now over to Sandra.
Thank you. All right, so we're looking at learner engagement, assessment, and satisfaction, and that's a lot. When we think of learner engagement, often we think of packaging the learning content, the learning material, and ensuring that learners get access to it and are able to interpret and respond to questions, etc. But in this online environment, packaging the material is not as simple as it appears to ensure that learners are truly engaged. Many of our students log into these online sessions and they walk away from it. And so when we call on them, they're nowhere near and they're not getting any response from them. Is that engagement? No, but your register will show that they attended the class because they're actually in the online space, and you can see that they're there. However, for many of them, they're not truly engaged until you start giving them something to do. And if repeatedly we allow the students to come to class and we're not engaging them, actively engaging them in the online space, we're just, and this is true of many of us colleagues, we read from slides. So we're basically substituting the whiteboard in our online environment for the PowerPoint slides that we're reading or the handouts that we're sharing, but the engagement is missing. What we need to ensure is that the engagement is there, and the evidence of engagement should also be there. So from the UCJ standards, you will see in the evidence, learning styles need to be accommodated. You will see course guides, outlines should illustrate the outcomes, what it is that you want them to do in terms of cognitive, behavioral, and so on. We need to ensure that we achieve these by the way we try to reach out, try to engage our students, and that we get the response, the meetings, etc., that we have with them. We need to ensure that the activities that we plan, even in our own curriculum meeting, our own program meeting, where program leaders meet with different lecturers, we just need to ensure that the plans that we have for them, the sample of the formative, summative, all the assessment, all the work that they're going to be doing, show that they are truly engaged with the material. And this is something that the students need to be aware of, because some of the students, you'll hear them say that they didn't think this piece was supposed to be submitted, they didn't think that piece was supposed to be submitted, and because of missing pieces, they are lacking grades and so on. But these things will have to be communicated to students if we're planning an online modality. And let us not rule out the blended, because this is not, these standards don't really cater only for online learning. They speak about distance education. And so a blended modality is more than accommodated in the standards. So the rules and regulation is suitable for face-to-face, yes, to some extent once you're integrating technology, blended or truly purely online. We need to ensure that our documents that we circulate, that we communicate to all stakeholders, show what is at stake, truly show what is at stake. All right, so the assessment, the kind of feedback that we want to get from them, the way that we ask our questions, all of this needs to be written and guided by the internal policies, our own internal policies of the university, right? So we need to ensure that the schedule for assessment is communicated to the students, the quality guidelines, what it is that we want them to adhere to, the technology that we want them to use. And this is really true of a lot of institutions where, unfortunately, we have little communication in terms of the software, the applications that are used in the real world, the world of work that we're preparing our students for. And so we try to find, maybe it's a matter of expense, but we try to find online open source resource to engage our students instead of using what is out there in the environment where they will be working. We find that we adopt applications that are substandard. These are practices that we must eliminate if we're going to expect them to have the skill set in the work world that we need them to have, right? And we're equipping them for this space, but some of the times we access material and we share with them and we say, okay, this is not SPSS. This is something else. So you will have to do it this way, you'll have to do it that way. And by the time they're finished with the course or finished using the application, they have lost what it is that we really wanted them to achieve. Some of them minimally, for the majority, maybe the average, but the true extent to which we wanted them to be able to embrace these applications, to be able to go out in the work world with minimum training by the employers, because employers look at this, you know, employers look at what the students from our institutions come with, and they're thinking, oh, well, maybe next time I need to reach out to another institution to get the quality student that I want. And it's not that our students aren't theoretically balanced, but the practical experience, the experience with the real world tools, the authentic tools, they may be lacking because of what we use in the education and training process. So those are just some of the things. And as Schontal said earlier, all of these standards, all of these indicators and the criteria and evidence, they're all on the UCJ website. They're packaged, parsed and packaged in the distance education standard. And so in the interest of time, we can only touch on some of them, but they're there for us, right? all of us can go that are registered with UCJ. We can go, we can download, we can get a fee, and we need to, because if we're going to be practicing integrating the technology in our classroom to the extent where some of the things we are doing can be regarded as online, whether it's in blended or any other form, we need to ensure that we adhere to the best practices and we try to transition from this face-to-face building block that we're trying to pick up and put it on the open online space and calling it online learning. All right. I am going to quickly look at the technology services as well. So the technology, the institution procedures for determining and managing the tools used to support communication, to support and communicate distant education programs. These tools include hardware, software, communication platform, and all associated cyber technologies. So this criterion, or this element of the standard technology service, covers all of this. And we need to ensure that in our packaging, in our policies, we take care of the students' data. What happens when students log into our system? What cybersecurity policies do we have to ensure that we are protecting all of their information there? There needs to be annual technology plan and budget. Yes, we have students who do not have the means to acquire their own upgraded laptop, upgraded desktop, whatever it is, but their own computer that is capable of doing the things and using the software that we want them to use. And so we need to ensure that there is a functioning lab somewhere on campus that students actually have access to the way they have access to the library to ensure that they can do what we ask them to do with the software. Because many of them have that word processing application on whatever tool from phone to tablet, but we don't want to exclude anyone. And so we need to ensure that we have that space on the campus where they can come in, access the technology, whether it be even using their device to get access to some of these limited software through our remote desktop applications. But we need to ensure that we take care of those needs as well. The Wi-Fi policy of the institution, we need to ensure that these Wi-Fi policy reflect what we want them to reflect in terms of how secure they are and what is required for students to access and so on. Documented agreements, that is contract, should exist between the ISP. There are defined roles and responsibilities, the institution, and all stakeholders of the institution who will actually be engaged using these technology, all right? In terms of the practical application of the technology, the student must have access to the systems that we want them to have access to. We have some institutions that, and none of us are there, so I'm not really pointing finger at anyone because none of us are truly there in terms of our practices as yet, but we should be growing, right? We should be seeing some form of transformation, and the transformation should not be with an LMS doing all you want it to do for the students, including being a student management system. So let us look at our own situation, identify a student management system that caters to our situation, can be adopted, adjusted, modified, however you want to put it, to suit our students' need, to suit our lecturers' needs, rather than to take on some of these very exorbitantly priced LMS, where the company actually say to you, we have some student management capabilities. That's not what we want. We're tertiary institutions. None of us can go on to, and I will not even name any software provider, but we can't really adapt to some of those because they don't suit our needs at the tertiary level. They're more suitable for secondary education, etc. So we need to ensure that the SMS is there, the student management system is there. Students can get their interactions with it to access which class, which course, which lecturer, which program, how many courses they have passed, failed, all of these things. We need to ensure that the SMS that we have capture this kind of information. We need to ensure that there's a learning management system that packages the material the way we want to package it, where lecturers can interact with the platform, update the resources that are there. Students can access these resources and not having to use up too much data, because a lot of them don't have access to Wi-Fi readily. So sometimes we know they're buying data. Do they have to download an entire book consisting of how many megabytes and gigabytes before they can get to the material that they really need? Or do we have databases, library databases that are going to cater to some of these needs? Can we, instead of giving them a link that will download an ebook, we can give them access to the library resources where they can go when they have the time and the convenience, and where we can just extract for the sake of our PowerPoint, our class discussion and so on. We can extract what is truly meaningful and we need them to apply at this point, but we actually give them other time when they will go and read, because the online environment demands that students take a lot of responsibility for the interaction they will have with the course material. And I'm not going to turn over for another segment with Schontal, because we need to go on to the workshop. So I'm just going to be looking with you all at the transition, integrating the standards. And these are the pillars of the standards. And you'll notice that once you have interacted with the standards before, you'll notice that they are on the platform there as governance, separate from financial management. But in my little diagram here, I have financial management coupled with governance. And I'm sure that as you think about it, you can say why. Because it's at the leadership, the helm of the institution, that you find decisions regarding financial management are made, right? So who gets the funding? Which department gets the funding? We need to ensure that it is not a case where the animal that makes the most noise is fed most often, but rather where the critical needs exist. What is it that we need to, because we know that financing is always an issue in education, right? We will never, ever be able to truly say that we're getting that slice of the pie that we want out of the government's budget or out of the leadership coffers. Everybody will have needs, financial needs. Every department will be saying, I need more, and we can always use more, right? But just to ensure that we are leveraging the finances at the point where the needs are most critical, if we're going to be seeing the transformation that we wish to see, we need to ensure that what we're doing reflects what we ought to be doing in terms of where we put our finances. The academic programs and curricula, we need to ensure that the academic programs and curricula, we liaise with the government, the workforce. In fact, we should not have students going out, and we're hearing that there are skill gaps in our graduates. No, liaise with the employers, find out what it is that they need, and work on our programs to ensure that we're satisfying these needs. Recently, our Prime Minister mentioned having to import certain categories of workers. Did we do the research and development from a higher education level to see that these needs were going to be here and that we needed to be able to fill that gap? I'm not against importing persons to work. Migration, immigration, those things will always be happening. However, where we have a need, we should be doing the research, working with the ministries, working with the employers to see that these are skill sets that we will most certainly need to prepare for the next 5 years, whatever it is, right? We need to be ensuring too that the technology that we're using to deliver the programs is in fact the technology that is out there in the world of work. We need to ensure that the professional standards that are put out by these professional bodies, we're adhering to them in our practices. So our curriculum must continue to see itself being transformed, right? Not just in the way the material is packaged, not just for online, but it is necessary that all of these stakeholders be a part of the decision making as far as the learning outcomes and the program is concerned. With regards to learner support and services, as practitioners, we know what we're experiencing. We're getting the feedback from the students. We know the kind of challenges that they face. We know the complaints that they have. We know the way our assessments are going. None of us in this room can say for sure that our assessments are going seamlessly. Even in our face-to-face environment, students found ways of doing ingenious things, or I should say disingenuous things, but they still do it. They continue to do it. And the studies are saying that more so it has been done in our online environment. We're going for Proctor software. And some of these Proctor software are really expensive. And it's at a cost to the students, and sometimes they retaliate against it. It's at a cost to the institution, and funding could be better spent. What about packaging the material so that even when the books are open, it's really the cognitive knowledge and the application that students need to interpret and put on the assessment, rather than just be able to take something, regurgitate something and bring it back to us. This is time consuming, yes, but this technology, this online environment affords us this because we can create reusable material that we only have to edit, do a little bit of editing from time to time, and we don't have to do it as individuals. We can do it collaboratively. There are institutions that have program leaders working with a team. Just assign different assessment, different learning outcomes to different team members, give them a chance. And here we have publications coming out of the university because we can package these not just for local consumption, but for global consumption. Online is global. And here we have an opportunity to serve the wider world if we just do the thing right. All right. So let's look at now learner engagement. We have done that already. We spoke about ensuring that the standards that are established are communicated. Ensure that you do the necessary survey so that you can see whether progress is being achieved, where the gaps exist, where we need to plug them, where we need to narrow them. Talk to our stakeholders, some of those very students that we are looking at to say, okay, how can we engage a proctor service to prevent them from cheating? They have the answers. They know that proctor services don't necessarily do the trick. They know that having some software that tell you that I'm out of my window, I navigated out of the window, they know that this makes no sense to them. They know they can be on WhatsApp with their friends while they're not navigating out of the screen. So we need to just ensure that we work with all stakeholders, collaborate, get the input, and believe me, the student council body, they know all that is happening on the ground where the students are concerned. Just as we practitioners, we know what is happening where the lecturers and the institution financing, where it is going and all of that. All right, so the human resource management and the technology, we can't just put them together. Things are changing. Human resource need to take their place, ensure that the workforce that they engage, all of the universities want to have a caliber of staff that can cater to the needs of the internal and external customers. But how many of the institutions are prepared to send these persons for training, to facilitate time, allow time for persons to do the necessary research that they need to do and make the necessary changes that they need to make? Some of the HR department practices need to step up. They need to change. Performance management, performance appraisal, it's not about meeting your goals. You need to really look at what persons are doing to engage other persons so that we can lift the university from point A to point Z, because that's where we really need to go. So while we transition A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., we really have a target to reach. And we need to ensure that all stakeholders, we're bringing in the right people, we're helping these people to perform at their maximum by allowing them to have the things that they need in order to do the work that they need to do. And there is an adage that says that comfortable employers, that once they're comfortable, they will go above and beyond. And so that is what all workforce management or managers, human resource department, that's what they should really be gearing at. And in this time of the pandemic, when there's so much being said about mental health, we need to ensure that we're also doing that, checking on persons' welfare, ensuring that we provide the necessary support in this mental health area. Advertising and promotion, we need to ensure that quality information is out there. And when I say quality information, and my colleague Dr. Shakespeare is coming and she will do justice to advertisement, promotion, research and development, but I'm telling you, current information needs to be on the platform. Current information needs to be in the handbook. Current information, accurate information. There's so many times when document A has been revised in the institution, but document B has not been touched. But these two documents correlates, and students and just about any employee can come to you and say to you, what are we practicing? Why is it that this is here and that is here? This student is demanding that he gets this because this is what we're saying right here. But this is the most recent update. So we need to ensure that all our documents, the cohesion exists, right? And for research and development, we need to try to create that data-driven culture. We need to ensure that the data-driven culture is created, that what we want to achieve really is what we're achieving. What is the implication of non-compliance? For us, non-compliance with the standards mean that we'll always have issues and challenges in the institution. And we know that there's no perfect organization, but applying these standards in our blended learning environment, online learning environment, means that we will no longer see the mounting complaints from our stakeholders. And we know that we had a lot of them when we immediately transitioned, and that is why some schools just did not offer any class for a period of time, whether it be a week down, 3 weeks down, whatever the case is, because we wanted to ensure that we get it right. We wanted to ensure that whatever we put out, whatever we decide to do when we open our doors was in fact able to stand up to scrutiny. But in standing up to scrutiny, we saw mounting complaints from internal customers, external customers. The students had a myriad of challenges. Employees had challenges. Some of them were stressed and overwhelmed and they weren't afraid to voice it. And all of these resulted in financial losses. None of us want that to be our reality. So in making the transition from face-to-face to online, to any version of online, the self-assessment is vital. And as we self-assess, we need to ensure that our documentations are proper. None of us want to find ourselves, our institutions rather, going up the down escalator. All right, where are we now? Our institutions went through a transformation process similar to what is mentioned in the SAMR model and the TPAC. But are we doing the things to get to that point on these transformational models that we really need to get to? While we can agree that we're not there as yet, we're not really practicing any pure online education, and maybe some of us are not really thinking of that in our near-term goals, our most short-term goals, or even our medium-term goals. We're not seeing ourselves as purely online education institution. But it is important that we can identify where we are. Where the SAMR model is concerned, It speaks about substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Substitution is where we take the technology and we just substitute it for something that we were doing that could have been done without the technology. For example, our students used to walk into the cashiers and they would pay, and the cashier would generate a printed receipt or maybe write up a receipt in a book. What we see happening now, or we should be moving to, is an augmentation where there is more than just a substitution. We're not just using the computer to generate receipts, or we're not just doing that basic cash register kind of interaction on the computer, but we're actually using the technology to substitute with additional functionality so that when the students come in or they stay wherever they are and they pay using our e-commerce platform online with their card or whatever means, then our systems should reflect it throughout all our transaction files within the university. So much so that the SMS should clear these students to say, okay, they are financially cleared. When we reach the modification level, our SMS shouldn't just show that they're financially cleared, but the system should be so updated that it reflects their balances, the courses that they have paid for, and all of those little refineries. Moving forward to the redefinition stage, which is truly transformational, our systems should be so integrated that we're doing things that would not be possible without the technology. So these students would pay. They would see their financial clearance on our SMS, and they would be integrated into or incorporated, enrolled into the correct courses with the correct lecturers in the correct groups on our LMS. Are we there yet? No, we're not there yet. But the important thing is that we continue to support the growth and the development in each area, right? And is it achievable? There are institutions who are getting there. With regards to the TPAC knowledge, TPAC framework, it speaks about the technology, the pedagogical content, and the knowledge. Yeah. Our teachers, a lot of our lecturers, they're coming from the face-to-face environment. We did have some persons who were technically savvy and they were able to move from the face-to-face environment with all of their teaching materials, repackaging, getting that instructional design frame of mind on, and being able to create the videos, do the cases and so on from the material that they had in their notes that they would have used as face-to-face lecturers. However, this is not always the case. How do we support these lecturers whose content, whose methodology is still just suitable for that face-to-face environment? Where the content is lacking, we know that content is everywhere. Teachers normally have their content, and where they lack the content, team teaching is always available. Pairing experts or having those course leaders that are experts be a part of a team or leading a team where they can always share the content. So content is the easiest one to get done. However, we do have challenges, and we're seeing it time and time again, where the technology is a challenge for the lecturers. These lecturers probably had technophobia before the pandemic, but we are now mandating them to go online, reach out to your students using the computers. And so they need training, they need workshops. I've seen places where mandatory courses have been put in effect, and I have no challenge with this. The mandatory course, however, it must be done in a competence-based model where they can always go back and do it again if they didn't get it right. You must also have that kind of support that will allow for a technical team who is accessible, persons who are accessible when they are needed. And so that support should be there as well. You should also have resource material, short videos, PowerPoint that can provide teachers with steps how to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Some persons just want to put up a PowerPoint on the LMS and they're challenged. Many of us can do it, some of us can't. The training should be made available. The learning resource with step-by-step instructions, that kind of support should also be there, and a technical team that they can call on when it gets beyond what is immediately available. As far as the being able to take the pedagogy or the andragogy, being able to take these methodologies that we have as face-to-face practices and putting them in our online environment, it becomes an issue. The face-to-face methods, we can't just transport them into our online environment and call it done. No, so we need to see the redefinition of some of these methodologies. We need to explore what can and will work for the online environment. Students have often mentioned, oh, my lecturer read the PowerPoint. And if any of us have had any reason to observe some of our teachers online, we will see that many of our teachers, far too many, in fact, are reading from PowerPoint slides. All our tertiary education students or higher education students can read. That's how they got here. And so packaging these wonderful PowerPoints and sending it to them, that takes care of the reading part. You don't need to come back and read. Let's apply. Let's build cases. Let's do short videos that are going to nail the concepts and that are going to provoke thoughts on what it is that you are getting out of this video. How can you apply it in your context, your organization, the environment that you're in right here as a student, or even just the Jamaican context? Or I'll take you outside of Jamaica and give you a case of something happening elsewhere, and I'll ask you, how is it that you can use this concept, this content, and you can apply that to this environment? And how could they have had a better outcome? It's possible that we can do this. But again, workshops will be necessary, training will be necessary, and that support, because the instructional designers who are familiar with the technology, they are able to do this. They're able to package these learning concepts into small or short, but it be video cases, and then we can get those truly mind-boggling questions coming from our learners once they interact with these assessments. Assessments have been a sore point for many of us tertiary education institutions, not just tertiary. Assessment online, we don't know who is doing the assessment in a lot of cases. And sometimes we say, okay, we are going to be proctoring, we're going to whether be asking you to upload or scan or just show us your ID cards and so on. There are other things that are going on in the assessment environment. Persons are emailing their files, sending it to their friends, who are just changing up a few things and they're submitting it. Fortunate for us, we can look and see the source of the document, but any of us really want to be checking every paper that we mark to see if this was sent to the students, if this was a screenshot of something else that they're integrating in it? No, we just want to mark, right? Especially when we have those lengthy research papers to mark. We can run them through Turnitin, we can do all the plagiarism checks, but it doesn't mean that we're going to find all the things that are happening in the classroom. So let us try to ensure that we package our assessment to reflect application at the higher level of the spectrum. We don't really want to have them just bringing back what we said in the classroom or doing those multiple choice where the answers are very straightforward. Like I can ask you now, what's the meaning of the acronym SAMR as far as the SAMR model is concerned, the model put forward by, I don't remember, oh, yeah, so you can ask me that and I just flunked that. But now we can ask the students questions about applying the SAMR model to their environment, to a class that they have to do, to a training that they have to do, and see How is it that they're going to apply? And this, everybody is going to think differently. So when we package our assessment, we need to ensure that the 4 C's are catered to, right? So we're talking about the critical thinking, the collaboration, the communication, the creativity, problem solving. So the students, are they able to collaborate? Yeah, they can communicate with each other. They can still form their groups. They can share videos, etc. with us to show that they work together in groups to get these things done. But how are we going to get to where we want to? How are we going to do it? How do we support this transition? Many of us are not yet believers. All of us need to be converted.
Sandra?
Right? Yes.
Okay, right. So you have presented a very comprehensive outline and explanation of the standards which we have been looking at. You have delved in depth in terms of the academic program, that's standards 2 or the strand 2, and you moved on to 3 in terms of the learner support, the learner engagement, that's number 4, and then the technology services, number 5. So where we are now as colleagues in this webinar together, we have to think deeply on what you have shared and try to interpret it, because within our respective institutions, we are all about providing service for our learners. And the service that we provide should give us a product in terms of the kind of learners who come through our system, learners that are ready for this society in terms of technology readiness. And so we have to look back at what we do in our institutions to make sure that our standards are successfully communicated to our learners, as well as our facilitators and the different arms that support the university. We also have to look for equivalency in terms of the online and the face-to-face students receiving the same kind of service so that they can turn out to be the same kind of product. And also there has to be that adequacy in terms of what we perceive on paper or in our planning in terms of how we're going to integrate these standards, that what comes out is expressed in the way that we had intended. And so definitely the UCJ standards document should be able to help institutions to move along to achieve. So we want to move now into the section where we've done the assessment of where we were and where we are now and how we want to get to, fine tune our respective standards in our institution. So we're moving into the workshop component of the webinar, and we want institutions to just, visualize, take in all that was said. And those of you who have gotten a chance to read through the standards document in detail, that's great, because as an institution, you have to do your own self-study report. It's this report that you're going to present to the UCJ staff when they come to assess your institution to see how ready you are for accreditation, for delivering quality distance education in your institution. How robust is your institution in terms of, how it has integrated the standards? How are they regulating? How are the indicators being, assessed and aligned, and we're seeing evidence. So each institution will need to do a self-study report. So we have created a little template, which you now are seeing on the screen. And I would advise that you take a quick screenshot of the template. I'm also going to drop the template into the chat as a Word document. But we would want each of you, we're going to move you out into breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, you are going to go according to your level of higher institution. So we're going to ask those who are at the teacher colleges that you will select that breakout room, because we want to have a conversation going among the teacher college colleagues, and you talk about your level of readiness. As you assess your institution, where are you on the scale? We also want you to, for those of you who are part of the universities, then you select that room, and then those of you who are part of university colleges, then you go into. So we want to have some conversations, robust discussions now. And you're going to look at where you are right now as an institution in terms of, planning for online teaching and learning, in terms of how you have looked back at your curriculum, and the content in your individual programs, and you're checking to see if you have infused distance education standards enough in those, in the content areas and the curricula of your institutions. We also wanted to look at the level of interaction and engagement from students as you use the distance education standards to teach and to get them to learn. And definitely we want you to think about assessment. In your institution, how have you reconceptualized assessment to account for authentic assessment, to account for those kinds of assessment which are application-based? Are you integrating project-based kinds of learning? Are you making sure that you're using formative assessment and moving them onwards into becoming, or even in lieu of summative assessment? And finally, in terms of the services and support to students and faculty, we know that this is all the standards are important, but the services and support can make or break your institution. So we want to look to see if you have, your institutions have policies in place for training, for pedagogy, for communication of these standards, all of those. Where you are now, what are the strengths of your institution? And you're also now going to think about areas for improvement, those gaps. How are we going to plug them? So we're going to ask you, I'm going to stop sharing now so that it will allow you to move into your question and answer section, and not question and answer, move into your breakout rooms. And then from your breakout rooms, we can come back and we can field questions or answers that might come up. So I'm going to just now ask the technical support staff to get the breakout room going for us so that we can have persons moving into their rooms. How long do we spend in the breakout room, Sandra?
25 minutes.
25 minutes. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to ask the technical support team to please go ahead and to do the breakout sessions. And I'm also going to put the document in a Word version in the chat space, as long as it will allow me to upload it.
Good morning, everyone. I guess we have 25 minutes and the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And so we need to start. We have 29 of us here, 20 participants now. So we definitely need to start.
Yeah, let me introduce myself. I'm Kotra Mohan from UCC. I would like to share, I'm from the psychology and behavioral science department. The whole distance learning and online, I'm not very sure to what extent it has limitations for behavioral skills of students and overall personality development, because the face-to-face over the years has facilitated not just cognitive learning, but the behavioral and personality development. So I have my own reservations, and I would like this group to discuss, if possible, to what extent through this online distance education, we can also try to help students to develop these skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've heard you, Professor. It is for every one of us to trip in, but I have listened to the professor and, no, in fact, there is none, Vivian. There's none. Vivian is asking, is there an assigned team leader? In fact, there is none. But we have the few minutes and we need to make the most of the few minutes. And I see Professor has gone ahead to share his experience and would like, elements there to be discussed. We need to also look at who will present the information for us, right? And so, yes, Vivian, your hand is up.
Okay, hi, good morning. All right, so Vivian Carr, the president of the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. And I have listened to Professor just now, and I'm smiling because we were actually, as an institution, en route to what we call an online institution totally prior to the pandemic. Some of our courses were online. And so we were so happy when we were able to seamlessly transfer as the courses came up, all the other courses that we had actually, or programs that we really had time to get online. Our students have no desire to go back to face-to-face. We have none either. So even as we have the conversation, we need to bear that in mind, that there are some institutions who will not be blended even, but just totally online in the delivery, and also the learning experience for both students and faculty members. So just wanted to put that in the mix as we have the conversation.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. However, there is one colleague who had asked in the chat who will share when we go back out there, who will share. And I have seen where, of course, Professor has shared and you have shared, Vivian. And I am wondering if, some of these persons who are sharing, if they can let us see where commonalities are, and then, they can be the ones, because we're a group of 34, yes? We could do some, they could volunteer to share when we go back to the wider space. How does that sound? Because yes, we could discuss it all. So possibly need persons to be taking some notes as well.
Ms. Wilson is here from the UCJ. Is it possible that she could assist in the process? Just wondering.
I think that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Someone should summarize from this, our group, what we have discussed. And I have just heard Vivian sharing that their programs are online, but fine, online programs for certain courses has in fact relatively better compared to face-to-face. But programs like skill-based, human skill-based, like counseling, psychotherapy, or fieldwork-based courses, where human interaction and field-based exposure, which provides skills for them to work in the industry and the workplace. I think in that context, I have my own reservations for certain courses, distance learning and online, because they need to have the physical interaction and maybe role plays.
If I may, I'm so happy you brought that up, because at the CJST, we do just that. We train counselors, psychologists, and yes, it's skill-based heavily. What we did when the pandemic came around was to just make sure we taught our students how to counsel and do all that you just mentioned online. So it's just about using the technology. I'm seeing other hands raised, so I'll pause for a while and allow them to.
I am seeing Diana's here and Catherine, and Diana's hand was up first. And we talk, and I'm coming to you, Diana, because we talk about skill-based and we talk about psychotherapy, and so on. But when we look at where the world is heading, we're heading to telemedicine and teletherapy and so on. And I'm going to give Diana. Diana, you go ahead, please.
Yes, kindly. Good morning, colleagues. Diana Davidson, President, Catholic College of Mantua. It's good to be here and for us to be having this discussion. Questions I wish to raise, and perhaps just one question at this time, as it relates to the accreditation to be conducted or being conducted by the University Council of Jamaica. Are we as institutions expected to submit one of these three categories? An online accreditation, a traditional accreditation, or a blended accreditation? One. Or secondly, will UCJ determine what accreditations we get? Online accreditation, traditional accreditation, or blended? I'm quite concerned.
And I am happy for that. We're coming to you, Catherine, and after that it will be Christopher. I'm very happy for that question, Diana, because when you talk about the online accreditation and blended accreditation, earlier in the presentation, I remember one of the presenters spoke to whatever the standards are, it is very good for online accreditation and it works well for blended. However, it doesn't work fully for that face-to-face. So it is something that when we go back to the bigger room, we can bring that up. Thank you. Catherine, you go ahead. Then we have Christopher and then Lisa.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I am an associate professor at the UCC. And just to answer to the professor's statement, I believe that online learning is just as effective as face-to-face learning. I did my master's online and I was a working professional. I was able to apply what it is that I was doing in my own work and to apply to what I was studying. So I do not see a problem there with online learning. Now, in terms of the field-based that he mentioned, probably we could consider here blended learning. That is where blended learning could come in. Or we could also make use of the technology labs, have simulation exercises where students are in a virtual world, a virtual field, a virtual lab, and the Open University is making use of this. They have a completely online learning experience, and even Coventry University, we could borrow from those universities to see how the simulation exercises could work here in the Caribbean, because I was in England for a while, and so I know that these two institutions, that they are completely online and they use those virtual spaces to teach the students and even for the labs as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Catherine. And yes, I do support the blended approach, Prof. So if you're listening, yes, we do support the blended approach, and that was also mentioned. You spoke to the simulation, labs and so on, and I'm in a very practical field. And yes, but when we talk about that, that's another added expense. And are these universities, are we prepared? Do we have that type of money? Because we do need money to put in those things. And one thing that was mentioned earlier was that we have to try to use things which are up to standard for practicing, you know, that when the students go out there in the real world, as graduates, when they go out there in the real world, they then know how to use whatever is out there. And, you know, that is a real challenge. Now I'm going to take Christopher's hand and then Lisa. Go ahead, Christopher. Newton, your hand is up. If probably you're
Can you hear me now?
I'm hearing you now. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, all these technology challenges, eh?
You know.
I represent Caribbean Graduate School of Theology, at least one of those who do. And I'm one of those who have been fortunate to have had online education as well. So, and I must say that it is not all of the world who were caught by surprise with this COVID thing, because there are many institutions who have been online for donkey's years. So that is important to be said. But it does seem to me that the different types of courses may warrant different policies. And I think it was confirmed by what those who have to deal with psychology and psychotherapy had to say. I am currently teaching 2 language courses, and I'm foreign language courses. And I realize, particularly within the Jamaican context, where the internet is not as powerful as it is overseas, that Three things I think are important for us to promote as educators. And the main one is presence, that the people who are supposed to be working towards their degrees are the ones who are actually there, and not just that they are connected. Because every now and again, I would check with some of my students to find out whether or not this student is actually there. And it is not always so. And so I had to say to my students, hey, it's important, though we are conscious of the limitations with the internet, that one of the requirements of my class is that I must see you because we are in a synchronous setting. And though we have to be mindful that it is not always convenient, but it should be the policy. Sometimes the internet is bad for one reason or another, and it may be appropriate to say, okay, you may take the video off just so that you can stay connected to the class. But I think it really should be the policy that videos are on. So for synchronous education and delivery, to ensure that I can see that the one who will get the degree is actually the one who was there. We also want to promote authenticity, that people are who they are, who we are developing, and consistent with the program that they are in, that people are giving of themselves and giving their best. And the last but not least, that we as educators need to promote responsibility. Not just responsibility in terms of academic integrity, but we have found that there are other basic things that people can demonstrate faux pas where that is concerned. Where some basic courtesies online in class, or the backgrounds that we have, whether it is video background or audio background, that all those things, and the bigger the class, the more important it is for all of these things to be actually there. And I have seen that if we present a policy that is consistent with the promotion of these things, that it makes a difference to the class.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And you have said quite a bit there. And, you know, I was really taking notes there. And like seeing the learner in a synchronous environment, a policy be in place for that. You spoke to authenticity for those who, you know, we see they are who they are. And I can share the experience with you. In one of my recent classes, someone responded, and the voice, semester new and so on, but it just wasn't my student voice. And it was a sister of hers. And I had to say, listen, I mean, she is not a part of the class. She's an uninvited guest. So, you know, I had to speak to her about it, but then she had her sister in other classes before. That was what I was told by, you know, other classmates. And so, yes, when we talk about authenticity, we talk about promoting responsibility, and I would love to know, how do we do that? And that is one of the things, after we hear from Lisa, I'd love to hear a person saying, how do we promote responsibility? Another thing, and I have another question to throw out there. What do you think about the community being involved? Because we have to talk about working from home, they're going to school from home, and the noise in the community at times, the building, the horns of the vehicles, the bikes, what is in place. Where is now we're now talking about a silence zone. What is going to happen? I wanted to think about that in the meantime, and we go on to Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Valerie, and good morning again, colleagues. Quite an interesting discussion, something that Mr. Newton said. I strongly believe that we need to evaluate which of our programs will benefit from a pure online, which will be a blended approach, and which may in fact require a return to face-to-face. One of the concerns I have had is, and these are my personal concerns, is just as you said in terms of authenticity, and to take that a step further, engagement within the classroom setting. So I don't know how many of us have had that experience, but you're teaching. They don't turn their cameras on. Your camera is on, their cameras are off. And you pause to ensure that they're engaged. You ask a question, you do a poll, and you're greeted with silence. I don't know if you've had that sort of an issue. So my question is, are we going to have some sort of a standard approach to this interaction and engagement, not just on the platform itself, but in terms of engagement in the classroom? Are the universities going to explore together tools that we can use, and how will we access these tools? So for example, one of the things I have done is to use what is called a Padlet. So it's sort of an interactive platform where I can, add a link, and they go in and they're able to answer questions anonymously, and I can correct in case they don't want to unmute and answer the questions directly. So I found that even when I do that, I am still struggling with the sort of interaction that's needed for them to be fully engaged. In recognition of our time constraint, the second concern I have is in terms of how will we approach student and faculty training? So for example, there are early adopters who will, go on to technology very quickly. And then there are those who will lag behind. How do I train a faculty staff in an unlearning environment when they are struggling with unlearning environment? Is it that we are going to create these skill labs where persons can come in and be trained in a face-to-face on individual devices, and that somebody will be moving around to help them? Because if I already have an issue with online participation and navigation, training me online, how will that assist? So those are my two concerns: student engagement and training of staff and students.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. And they are very valid concerns that we have. And I see here in chat where Dr. Shakespeare has said that a contributing factor to the silence is that quite a number of students are taking on full-time jobs, and they're saying that they are at work. And yes, that is also one of the issue, but sometimes they're otherwise engaged. And so these are real issues, and we need to look at them, and we would love to take back some of these questions. In the very last 5 minutes, I will go through some questions that I have that we can take back there, right? You also spoke about evaluating our programs, which will benefit from online, face-to-face, or blended. And it takes me back to the very questions which Diana had asked at first about, is it online, the types of accreditation? Is it online, blended, or what? What accreditation will it be? Because now we'll be seeing this sort of mix. And Diana has her hand up as well. And I'm coming to you, Diana. And so and she had asked a question. How does UCJ define online accreditation? I think that was what she had said. When you come on, you can correct me if I'm incorrect. And, so that is it. And I have taken the question from you, Lisa. How would training go? How can we do training in this environment? Diana, go ahead, and then we'll have you.
Excellent. And just to respond to Lisa's concern about training, what we have done here at Catholic College of Management is that we've inserted a new course called Introduction to Online Teaching. find that it is important to define for our teachers being prepared and our facilitators who are preparing the difference between educational technologies, not just the instruments and the gadgets that you're using, but how they have to modify their programs. How do they design their instructions differently to have significant and meaningful impact? So to address both faculty and teachers being prepared for the wider market and everybody else, we've introduced an introduction to online teaching. Lisa also spoke about it and shared sadly the story of an individual whose sister is participating in the class. I think that what we need to do is to engage them differently online. So what we use restorative practices. When we get in, we start with a circle and everybody go online, turn on the camera and we share what is happening. You have 5 minutes, it's a quick go through to engage person. So we see who's there, we define the policy. Something like that happens, then we would have to have a discussion about what went wrong and how do we fix it. Simple things that we can use in restorative practices in higher education is going to save us as administrators, save us as instructors, and save our students as well. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Diana. And might I ask this question? Now we have our young trainees going out, our teachers are going out. When we look at it, these policies you're talking about, how do they manage the students in the online environment? Has the curriculum being amended to include managing students in the online environment? So all of those, a lot of training, a lot of thoughts have to now be going into what is happening in the online environment. Vivian, let us hear from you.
Thank you. Just want to quickly respond to two concerns that were raised. One of them had to do with just ensuring that the right student is doing the program versus, you know, as you mentioned, the example of the sister. I will share with you that I've had and heard from persons who actually shared with me without me even responding and judging them, that when they were offline, pre-COVID, pre-everything, all their assignments were done by others. And I was like, wow. So people will cheat both online and offline. And so it's really about ethics, values-based education. How do we teach persons that is just wrong and eventually it's going to catch up with you anyway, you know? And so that is where I think the major emphasis needs to be on, because irrespective of what systems you put in place, I have students in universities and they will tell you what students literally will spend an entire day doing cheat sheets and pasting things all over the rooms. I've heard it, I've seen it. So just be aware that with all the practicing and everything, as you mentioned, even the cell phones come into play. Just the other matter I want to just quickly bring to our attention with regards to training. So yes, we all had to go through COVID. Yes, all our faculty members were there at different stages. But if we use some of the principles of change management, I think that will help to deal with some of the challenges, because you will in fact have early adopters. You have those who really don't want to adopt any at all. And so what you then have to do, the IT team had to come up with a system where yes, you package, yes, you train and blah, but you also are open for those who want the one-on-one and who want to come in physically and meet with you to be actually handheld, etc. So there are ways to get around the various challenges. And yes, with various degrees of success, because we're dealing with human beings, you know, and all of that kind of thing. But there are principles and ways of getting it done. So if we just share best practices, what we're doing, sessions like these, I think are pretty helpful, because then persons can learn from each other what it is that they have been able to do. Yes, when I teach, everybody's camera goes on. I know the students. After a while, they can turn their cameras off and you know who is speaking, who is not, etc. And again, because maybe we're dealing with adults, maybe it's slightly different because we're dealing with a graduate program.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Vivian, and thanks for that. We have two people, we have two hands up. We'd love to hear from them. And of course, in the chat, they say we need to remember what was said in the that document there, the institution support document. We need to look at the items, the criteria in that, or the constructs in that document. So we need to give some thought to it. Go ahead, Najee, let me hear you in a minute. And then Avril, you have another minute.
Yes, I was just reminding us that we need to look at the document, but since you had already said so, we can
Okay.
just proceed when you're ready.
All right, thanks. Avril?
Good morning, all. I won't take any time then because I was concerned about the document as well. But just to concur with my colleagues that it is important to your people skills. There's more emphasis on your people skills when you facilitate in the online setting. So once the students feel that, you know, their needs, they are important, you do the check-in. I think somebody shared that idea earlier. You know, you check in with them to make sure they're okay, that sort of thing. You find that they buy in easier. And once you do a lot of application and interactive stuff, instead of just reading from the slides, that sort of thing, I find that they participate a little more willingly.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Avril. And we are going to look at the document. We are almost out of time. I don't know if we're going to get any extra time, but yes, we have the document that we need to look at. I had cut my document.
We have 11:20.
Sorry? Yes, Diana?
A message that says that we can go to 11:20.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So we are going to look at that first column there in the document. And if you have it, I have it, but it's not so clear. My photograph is not so clear. Someone has a very clear
yes,
picture, can you read?
I have a clear one. I took a photo of, yes.
Yes, please. I have taken a photo, but mine is not so clear when I widen it out.
Okay.
The structure of the institution study report. I also see your hand up, Christopher. While you Catherine, you want to go ahead and just tell us, and then Christopher, you can, does it have something to do with the document, Christopher?
Very much so.
Okay, fine. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Right, so,
no, hold on.
Go ahead,
Christopher,
go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Let
okay,
him
go ahead. Catherine, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. To the extreme left,
Okay.
to the extreme left.
In the green.
Assess, in the green on top.
Yeah.
Assess institution and integrated perspective for criteria 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Should I continue to the green or go across?
Yes, continue to the green. What is under it?
Where you are now.
And what is the first column saying with the blue?
Planning for online teaching and learning.
Okay. So where are you now in planning for online teaching and learning? And I guess the other where you want to be, is it? Where and where, how you'll get there, something like that?
So it's no strengths improvement.
Okay.
3 columns going down.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So where are
and
we now in terms? Go ahead.
Planning for online teaching and learning. The other one is question of reformatting content / curriculum to include DES. I wonder what DES is. I'm not sure. I know
okay.
What that is.
Right. Here it is. Here it is. As I was trying to.
What does DES?
What does the acronym?
What does DES means? Tamika, can you assist us there?
Distance education standards.
Okay, distance education standards. All right, thank you. So planning for teaching and learning, thanks. And where are we now? And I think we had this discussion because a lot of what we were saying is where has a lot to do with where are we now. I think we're in a pretty much confused state from what we are things not working, chaotic state. I should not say confused. I don't know if you'll agree with me there, because what was coming out of the earlier discussion, where are we now? What would you say? Where are we now?
Yes,
go ahead, please.
May I recommend that we discuss best practices for these areas in blue, because
Yes.
the rest of it is going to be contextual to each institution.
Which is
So if we
true.
look at best practices for each, then all of us will have something to take away. And I want to start with the very first one, planning for online teaching.
Yes.
One of the things that I think most important is that we have to think about how students learn in an online setting. We have to consider the challenges that the online setting will present to us. We need to consider the same thing about assessment. We need to consider how we are going to deliver, how are we going to deliver the program in an online setting when you know that, like I talk about Greek language. So I teach biblical Greek, and students need a textbook. One of the norms you would have in the face-to-face environment is that we would have to be writing, because we do need to see them write as well. Because the nature of language is to retain, writing is also important. And so I had to find something that I could use as a board so that I could demonstrate for them what I am expecting for them to use.
Okay.
So that had to be part of the planning.
Okay, so when we talk about planning for online learning, we need to look at the challenges, technological challenges, access to technology, learning styles, and training as well. How, if our, acceptance of technology, not when we talk about that, we also have to look at acceptance of technology as well, and training. Are our people trained? All of that, they would come on the challenges, would you say?
Yes, ma'am, among other things.
Okay, fine. Right, so yes. Sorry.
I'll leave somebody to jump into one of the others.
Yes. So can we hear from someone else? Let me read the chat. Something else came up in chat.
I just want to remind us that, sorry, Diana here, that when we're responding to a self-study, and it is really, whilst we must consider and bear in mind the best practices, we are really stating what we have done or intend to do with our own justifications. So wherein the best practice might be that we should do ABC, if that's not what we're doing, remember, it is a self-study to say what your institution has
what your institution has done.
Just to remind us that it is going to be different from perhaps one to the other.
Yes. So so you go ahead.
But let me also ask, over the years, there is very little research about online best practices. Are the universities and for the different programs, these best practice research is available so that we learn, understand what are the best practices. So in the medicine, we have evidence-based medicine. So do we have best practices for online, which has produced best results?
It is out there. The research is there. So it is out there. You see best practices out there, but what works in one jurisdiction, will it work in yours? What works in one discipline, will it work in yours? So there are best practices out there, right? Where are we now? How are we going to reach where? So we talk about the planning, right? Where are we now? And where are we now? How are we going to move away from here? What should we do? So is it that we're still in the planning stage?
Just in the evaluation or the assessment of assessing our needs, our challenges, and we'll start the planning.
I'm sorry, that was very shaky.
I'm proposing that perhaps for some institutions, we might very well just be assessing our needs, recognizing our shortcomings based on technology or availability of technology, different technology or techniques, or the experts, the gurus to instruct and guide our institution, the availability of such individuals to provide the guidance for us. So I think that we're not even planning in most instances just yet.
Okay. What do you say since 2022, when we have made this paradigm shift? What do you say, you know, how helpful is that period to us? We are now, say, 2020 to 2022. How helpful is that period to us? Should we do an evaluation to go where we want to be and see what, you know, what is lacking? How do we go to where? How do we make that move? How do we make that transition? Go ahead, Ione. Your hand is up.
Body. So you may. Thank you. You asked a question just now. Where are we? And I am going to respond to that, taking into consideration a number of comments that have been made earlier as well. I am speaking from the perspective of an HOD in the Behavioral Sciences Department. And so a few comments were made earlier on. I just want to comment on them and then say where we are at. First of all, I am presently a recipient of online training, completing my doctoral program. I have found the program so intensive, so enlightening. Each time I finish a course, I am stunned as to how much I learn. During the class interactions, I am not seeing any lecturer anywhere. We have a facilitator, but that facilitator does not teach except for the course syllabus that is given to you. However, it is the quality of the course syllabus and how the activities are laid out that actually engage the student into performing and acquiring, though you're not physical, you're acquiring all of those skills that are necessary. I'm doing clinical psychology. And each time I am engaging in an activity, it is so properly laid out that I am seeing myself all over the place in the clinical psychology setting, whether it's in front of a client when it's a case study, or it's in an administrative role, or it's conducting myself outside of the counseling arena, but taking the ethical considerations into factor. I am also, well, I don't think I can explain it enough.
Okay.
To let you know how valuable it is just to sit down and plan properly for how the programs have been delivered. I think Mrs. Bloomfield has done a fantastic job earlier on.
Yes.
But I think many of the questions are being asked now because some of us have not been immersed in actually doing it for ourselves, as I am doing. Because what I find now, it makes it so easy for me to at least try to help my lecturers to understand
we're going to close in 50 seconds. We're going to be put back in the main room in 50 seconds.
All right.
And I do hear you, and I do thank you for that. And I see where someone has said, assess, evaluate, implement the outcomes. They talk about capacity development and building workshops required for, you know, and building workshops. And this is it. So we are planning. We were thrown here. We didn't get to plan, but we can look at where we are. We can assess our situation. We can learn from that, and we can use the information from that and plan to go where we want to be. And so in 8 seconds, we will be coming out, and I trust and do hope that we have gathered quite a bit from this.
Good morning, everyone. Are you all hearing me?
I'm hearing you.
Great. I apologize. There seems to have been some difficulty with my microphone. Right. The aim of the breakout room sessions that we're having here is for you guys to share your perspectives with your colleagues on the online process, right? And to share your experiences. What have you learned? What have you seen through the time? Well, during COVID and post-COVID, how students have interacted with the online spaces, right? So I'm going to ask, it's an open floor discussion, so whoever feels more comfortable to just start us off with sharing their experiences, identify yourself and possibly what you teach and the institution that you're representing. I will ask Dr. Moore to resend the document when we return to the big room, essentially.
I'm here now, so I could just go ahead and resend it here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore.
Sure.
So don't all jump in at once.
Anyone hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Langston Dawkins, and I'm representing Heart NSTHS, the Kenilworth campus in Hanover, Lucy, Hanover, Sunny Bay, Hanover. Well, for me, where online is concerned, and students, I teach IT, by the way, and so one of the courses that I do is basic digital literacy. My experience with students and the whole online experience is they will be enthused about what is being done, especially because it's technology, and the fact that we're actually showing them that they can learn using their phones and tablets and computers right there in the home, and also due to the fact that the classes are being recorded, and so they can learn by even at their pace, meaning they, even if they for whatever reason would have missed a session, they can always go back and they can actually do the lessons. Most appreciative of this online I've recognized is my students whom I would have in the evening, my more adult students that I have in the evenings. We have our evening classes like the business management study students. These are persons who would be in the working world, and so they are very appreciative of the online classes that we have, and even the online classes that we have post-COVID and even during the whole COVID, because we continue doing online classes here at Kenilworth. So that's basically it for me. I see where students are appreciative of the nurture of having classes done online, with the retrospect that they can get access to all their material, course outline and everything online, and they can also go back at their convenience to view classes that they would have either missed out on or not clear, or they can just do general reviews, especially when it's coming on close to exams.
So what I can do, I'll just be the scribe for the moment as persons talk, and then I'm not sure who will do the presentation when we go back to the bigger group, but I'll just go ahead and jot down. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
All right, great. So let's go ahead with your conversations. I think you are doing great so far.
Morning. I'm Winston Watson from the National Police College of Jamaica. With the distance learning for us, when COVID-19 started, we normally did a lot of face-to-face training, and this limited the amount of persons who could come to the college and participate in some of these courses. Take, for example, the supervisor management. We normally do level 2 supervisor management as an in-service training to the members. These classes were generally, let's say, about 15 to 20, the maximum that we could host on campus at any given time. These classes are normally between 4 to 6 weeks long. So these persons had to leave from their various divisions and come to the campus to engage with us here. And with the advent of COVID-19, we saw the need that we needed to still continue training, and we adopted the distance learning aspect of it. Speaking to the supervisor management, with that, we were able to practically double the size of the classes or the cohorts. So we had at one instance class with 46 participants. So it was essentially training 2 classes at once. In terms of the control, the members were they were briefed as to what was expected of them if they were at campus. So we asked them to always have their cameras on and stuff like that to ensure that they were participating. And we use the similar function of breakout rooms to get persons involved. So in a sense, to us, that was COVID-19, although it disrupted the normal operations of the training, it actually brought some, let's say, some benefits in sense that we were able to train a lot of persons. So these persons could stay at home and we would have a larger group of persons participating.
That sounds good. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
My name is Olga James. I'm in charge of the Hartrust Granville campus. We are located just down the road from Sam Sharp College in Granville, St. James. It's a small institution, but fortunately we went online 2020 March, and we have gotten to the stage now. Well, for us, we were toying with online training, and as such, we had no choice but to buy in. And so for the skills that were hands-on when the pandemic, was really, or the virus was really raging, we had the theory aspects of the training online, and then we would bring in small groups, maybe 7 trainees, maybe a cohort would have been about 20. 7 initially. We'd break them in small groups for the practical. There were times when they couldn't even come on site because of the, the nature of the spread. But we have even gotten to the stage now where we have quite a few of our programs are directly online. So like at nights, we had over 120 persons who used to come on for classes. They are now completely online. One of the major benefits is that the reduction in traveling costs for the learners. More persons have, bought into the idea. Some are going home in taxis. Lots of persons who work get the opportunity to study. So some are going home in taxis and they're logged onto their classes. So, we have benefited significantly. Even to this stage now, we have the mixed modality where some theory aspects are online, while for the practical we divide them still into small groups, and they come in for practical, of course observing the protocol. So indeed we have benefited. Not only that, lots of our students now are more techno savvy in that they are utilizing the platform. Hart has subscribed since to WebEx, Moodle, and Teams. as our official platforms, but we also use others, to supplement, and the material is also uploaded for the trainees, the flexibility of them accessing, videos and whatever material the instructors upload. That's it for us.
Good morning. I had my hand raised, and then I hear Miss James just spoke. Still from Heart Trust, my name is Beverly Lawrence. What I find that since COVID, it has forced us who were not so technically savvy, or some of us were not ready for online, but COVID has forced us to learn the technology, and now we are successfully using it. I can recall just during COVID, when we had to move online, we have some instructors who were retired teachers, and they were not so technically savvy, so it was a little challenge. But now everyone is using online and they are with the program. The challenge we face with the online, though, is that it allows the trainees to access the classes from home or wherever they are. But sometimes they log into the class and they're only there in name and not physically or in body. So you will call on them, they are not there. So sometimes you don't get a true picture when you're doing the registration, the attendance, to see who is actually there. You can't go by the names. But more persons are getting online, although there's a serious challenge with the network providers, because we find that even during the class, sometimes the internet, we have internet connectivity issues, and a lot of time we have WhatsApp groups, chats for all the groups in training, and they will be putting in the chat, "Miss, the internet gone," or something. So the challenges are there, but we're in a better space now with online, where most, if not all, persons are getting the hang of it and appreciating the online. Also for instructors, I can speak for myself. I have accessed so many fully online programs since the pandemic, which I would not have done otherwise. So I use it to help the trainees to see the benefits of online learning.
Good morning, my name is Veronica Reed. I'm from UCC. I'm in a unique position, so I'm listening a lot because I joined UCC in the pandemic. And some of you who may be familiar with UCC knew that they were doing online learning previously. I don't know how much it was a challenge it was to bring all the students online, but I came into the institution when they were in COVID, when they were online. So I do not have a pre-COVID and a post-COVID, experience to see how that might be different. But some of the things that you are talking about are the same things that I experienced. One of the main challenges I have with students being online, and I think this might have applied regardless of whether they were studying online, is that because the students have access to the internet, they will immediately go to the internet for everything. And I try to get my students to understand that you are paying for this course and you're doing this course for us to set a foundation of knowledge for you before you go and just Google everything. You understand? So obviously anybody can go onto Google and search for whatever the topic is, and they would not know what is real robust information and what is not. So we are trying to lay the foundation for you, and then you can then, be better able to go and search. I'm not sure how many of them are really understanding that just going and Googling everything is not really a robust educational strategy. So when they do the assessments and things like that, you see the fact that they have access to the internet while they're doing some of the assessments in the kind of answers that they're giving, because they're not actually relying on the material that you've taught them in class. They're just relying on the first thing or the second thing that comes up in the Google search. So that kind of challenge, that is definitely a kind of challenge that I'm seeing. But we know that their access to the internet can also be useful. So I've definitely been using videos a lot in terms of the it's not necessarily for me personally in terms of saying I don't want the students to use the internet. When you leave university, you're going to be Googling a lot. I think what students need to learn is that the first thing that comes up in your search is usually not the most useful thing. And if you have a knowledge base in an area, that helps you to be more discriminating when you find that information online. So I'm trying not to tell them that don't Google anything and respond to my questions, but you need to learn the basis that we're trying to teach you here that really allows you to be discriminatory, to be critical of the things that you're finding, and really to distinguish between what might be academic or professional knowledge and then what might just be a blog post by somebody who may know less than you about this topic. So it's that kind of being discriminatory. People are living, they're growing up in a situation where they have access to so much information, and they need to learn how to discriminate and not put anything, as I said, the first thing that comes up in the Google search, that's what you put in the answer to the question, you know. But as I said, it is balancing what can be the opportunities or what can be the advantages or the strengths. So in terms of strengths, I definitely think that being able to use videos more, integrating those kind of things. I teach entrepreneurship, for example, as one of my studies. So let me just wrap up. And I'm able to use like a lot of videos from entrepreneurs themselves, making pitches, you know, things like that. So being able to integrate that kind of thing in the teaching online, I think is definitely one of the strengths, expanding it beyond just reading from the slides. Thank you.
Veronica, I just wanted to comment on what you were saying. Some persons might be thinking, what is so wrong with doing Google searches? But I understand what you are pointing out about this dependency on it in a way that students don't think about how they can use it to enhance learning. It's more just to provide an answer and not interrogating it. And so this actually, to extend what you're saying, it actually creates the opportunity for training on academic literacies. So as an institution, you can now provide an additional service for your students, for them to think about ways in which they can, you know, interrogate media or information that they get off online, and how they can, you know, work with it to enhance their learning and what is being taught to them in a more practical and positive way. I think that's where you were going, right, Veronica?
Yes, definitely. And I'm looking up those WebQuest activities that Jeanette Clacon suggested. Thank you very much. They look useful.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks. Next person.
Good morning. Sonia Davidson here from UCC, Head of Department for Business Administration, and also facilitator of some marketing courses here at UCC. I want to support what Veronica has said. Yes, she joined us right as lockdown time, but I've been here before that, where we actually had a robust online program, and we also had the blended program with a lot of face-to-face students, mostly adult learners, persons who are working and were coming to school in the evenings and on weekends. One of the things I have found in this period with the online is to ensure that our faculty have a teaching plan for each semester, and that teaching plan is shared with the students so that they get an expectation right up front of what is going to be covered for the semester, what is going to be done each week so that they can read ahead. And as Ms. Bloomfield said, the class is not then about reading slides, but about how do we apply this content that has been provided on the learning management system for the topics that we're going through each week. And also for the students to know when their assignments are going to be available to them and when they're due. So the teaching plan I have found has worked very well. It helps the facilitator with time management. It helps the students with time management. And I found that since we insisted on that, not that it wasn't there, but since we insisted on that in this lockdown period and thereafter, we have less issues. No, he said, she said, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And things have run much smoother during that time. We've also tried to beef up through our library the resources that are available to the students, the journals, articles, and so on, so that there's less reliance on this searching Google, as Veronica mentioned, where they just go and pick anything out of Google and tell you that, hey, they're citing it from wherever. So we have tried through our library to make sure that the students have access to academic databases so that they can really do proper searches and find material. One of the challenges I have noted is with the quantitative courses, the math courses and the accounting courses. Students were accustomed to coming on campus and they see the lecturer, they see what's on the whiteboard, and they're able to engage in a closer, intimate setting. It doesn't work with the online, it hasn't worked with the online. So there are some challenges with the quantitative courses. And so we have found that we have had to put on additional tutorials sometimes, you know, to help the students to get over the practice sessions, because it's one thing to say, okay, here's a practice sheet in the learning management system, go and do the practice questions. It's not working. So we have to engage through further tutorial sessions outside of the structured classroom time to try and bring these students up to speed. Our faculty, yes, some of them have challenges, especially those that came over in the transition from face-to-face to online, which we actually did over a weekend. It was good that we had a robust online platform before. So when we had that lockdown in March 2020, we moved everybody who was face-to-face onto the online platform over a weekend. So we never had any disruption during that time. But of course, came the challenge now of those persons who were accustomed to coming and standing in the classroom in front of us as students to change that orientation to what is now required in the online modality. So that's basically a capsule of what's happening at UCC.
Thanks a lot. Beyond, Sonia, sorry, there was something you were saying, one of the challenges of having transitioned to online. I think I missed it. I tried to capture it. I was trying to capture it, but I don't think this fully captures it. Could you just extend for me what you were saying there?
Well, we spoke about providing the resources through our library. So
I got that one.
Not relying on what Veronica spoke about. They just go search Google and pick up the first thing that comes up in Google. So we give them access to true academic resources that they can use. So we give them access to the international databases and so on. And we try to provide them with e-texts on the learning management system. So they have some reading material that can give them a jump start.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Next person, thanks.
Greetings, everyone. I believe next is me. I am Neela Annie Banks. I am from the Edna Manley College, particularly from the School of Dance, where I'm Director of Studies. Wow, okay. Where do I begin? We are blessed at the college, and particularly at the School of Dance, with an agile faculty. And I mean, I made that pun intentionally, because when we were forced, we had been making moves as a college to beef up our online offerings, And when pandemic hit and boxed us over and pushed us, our faculty was extremely agile, our administration was very, very agile, to the point where we were able in short order to change, even, you know, through going through our quality assurance mechanisms, of course, change many of our in-person assessments, for example, and in-person courses and exam-based courses to 100% coursework, because we recognize that the students were going to have to be able to do things that were more portfolio-based, not that they weren't doing them before, but those aspects of the course outlines that had been taken care of with end of semester practical examinations, for example, would have to now be folded into 100% coursework. And so faculty got on board, heads of department got on board, and we were able to hash it out for all of the schools. Now, particularly for the School of Dance, we realized that, you know, choosing to go online is a very, very different thing from being pushed into it. And so one of the first things we were having to do is to migrate to a Moodle platform, you know, use Moodle as our hub for even our practical courses, because all of our courses have the course outlines that we follow. And so all that information was housed in Moodle. All of the courses were there, and that actually became a very good base. That became almost like a school, if you want to call it, at a physical place for the students to be able to find us, find the work, come back to base every single time. We used a lot of Zoom. Some people are probably wondering how we taught dance virtually. Very interesting. Mostly Zoom, sometimes Google Classroom, sometimes video assignments sent through WhatsApp. So we had a multimodality thing going on when we were just trying to catch our footing. And then we made our decisions after that first semester. Okay, what are the things we're going to go along with? What are some of the things that other schools used that worked? What are the platforms that were the best practice platforms? And of course, we're doing international research as well and speaking to international colleagues, because the world of dance particularly was hit the same way everywhere. So we were, you know, going to different conferences and different seminars, figuring out how best to give our students that sense of being in studio for our practical courses, that sense of being in classroom for our theory courses, that sense of connection. I think sometimes we might have forgotten how traumatic the pandemic was. And so because everything now is online, we think, okay, you know, they should just be able to just roll into it. It was particularly traumatic for our students, and maybe because our students are focusing on communication of feeling. That's what artists do, eh? Communication of feelings and thoughts. They're very, very sensitive to what had happened during the pandemic time, whether they themselves got sick, family members were ill, and what was just the destabilization of what we would think was the world status quo in a way. But what we found is that changing tactic helped. So trying to bring, especially when we were doing a practical class, trying to bring that sense of connection, bring the affective to the fore more so than the cognitive or the psychomotor, really talking about feelings first, really engaging with students, looking through that screen and paying attention to each one of them. It made a difference. And I will tell you this, there are some things that we have now discovered, because it's, of course, everything is a research moment. So there are some things that we have now discovered that we will leave in the online space, because we're now at the point where we are making choices about what remains online, what aspects of our courses remain face-to-face and that kind of thing. And so there's some ways in which the autonomy that it gave to students in terms of working on their own, creating their assignments, sending them in, getting feedback, that actually helped them better when they came back into the studio. They were more embodied. And I found that, and not just me, my faculty as well, found that sometimes a reliance on the in-person didn't help to develop that sense of resilience and that sense of autonomy and that sense of ownership of their knowledge. And so we are taking that into account as a faculty at the School of Dance in terms of folding that in, not going right back to what we used to do when we were in studio before. We're bringing the feelings right back in, putting the feelings at the center, and also allowing them to be untethered in a way, and allowing ourselves to be untethered as well, because we found that that space created a different level of compassion, and it was better for the learning process. The theory courses, it was a little bit more difficult for the students, but still we were able to use a Moodle Hub, have the videos, you know, create the case studies, that kind of thing, and have the students engage that way. So I don't think our learning suffered, certainly not by the looks of the assessments. Our students were still able to do their final year shows. They had to quickly pivot, Lord, I hate that word now, but had to quickly pivot into learning how to apply their film skills to choreography. And now we have a whole burgeoning set of students who are dance film makers, young dance film makers, and we are expanding our curriculum to include that deliberately, because that is where the world is right now and is going to be. So there are a number of things that we learned. We're continuing to learn as faculty, and we're continuing to listen to those stakeholders, particularly the student stakeholders, in terms of what worked and what didn't work. And as I said before, we're at the moment now where we are going online in hybrid ways by choice, really reflecting on what we have learned and allowing space, allowing time for rest, recalibration, consideration, because there's no way, for example, mental health can be ignored at this point in time. For those who were ignoring it before, it is right front and center. And without that, we cannot actually get anything out of our teaching learning experience. So I think that is it in terms of the School of Dance. I will say once again, I think our students are young adults. I think they are much more capable than sometimes we think they are, generally as educators, than they think they are as well. They really use that autonomy well in terms of the School of Dance students. And when they were brought back into studio, they blossomed. So those are some things to consider. Thank you.
Denise Manot, Michael University. My mic is not working very well, so I hope you'll be able to hear me to the end of my comment.
Perfectly, you're sounding good and strong.
All right. Not sure where my comment will go, but just making a comment about the fact that a lot of content, students are privy to a lot of content on the website. And so we need to, not just students, but lecturers, we need to focus on how do we now promote and maintain academic integrity, because students can use information without even giving the copyright, you know, so we have to ensure that we encourage and promote academic integrity. So I'm thinking that academic integrity is focused on positive values such as honesty, fairness, respect, etc. And so we should encourage the incorporation of these values into our daily teaching and learning experience, so that we will eventually promote or create a culture of academic integrity. And I'm also thinking too, where authentic assessment is concerned, that this can play a very important part, where the authentic assessment emphasizes creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving where the student learning process is concerned. And I think the overarching focus could be on STEM. So if we have this kind of authentic assessment in place, then the students will not skew towards being dishonest, because it's not about regurgitation, but it's about how do you apply, how are you creative in your thinking, and how do you go about solving problems. So the emphasis is on how do we now promote, maintain values within the teaching learning environment, which we can do by integrating it into the teaching learning experience. And how do we now encourage authentic assessment? We need to be very cautious, not cautious, but we need to be very intentional so that we focus on assessment that forces or encourages our learners to be more critical problems and do problem solving. Okay, I'm finished. I hope you heard all of that.
I think I did. You can see what I'm typing and you can tell me.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rory Evans, and I've been listening and very intently because I'm also from a unique perspective. I'm not even quite sure if I fit in here in terms of the target group that is covered, but I'll bring you a perspective from the corporate university, which based on the discussion so far, is in many ways, in some ways are similar to the traditional universities and colleges, but in many ways we are very different. I mean, we are in the context of a corporate organization where people's primary role is not learning. And so, you know, we are using learning now to help to aid them to be more effective in their roles. So I agree with a lot of the comments, but one area, as it was touched on with the assessment and the academic integrity, is an area that I would love to hear some more on, because it is an area that I believe is an area for improvement and where we face a significant challenge with the online modality and how it is that we ensure that the integrity of our assessments remain. Because as was said since morning in some of the earlier discussions, we really don't know, you know, when somebody logs online to do an assessment, how independent that assessment is, and whether we can say at the end of it, somebody having received a passing grade can actually go on and they have mastered the areas. So that is one particular area we struggle to find a fix for. I mean, we've tried different things, you know, still open. I'd love to hear some of the comments on that. We always did a mix of online and face-to-face learning. So, you know, that the switchover wasn't as big a challenge for us as it was for some others when COVID came. But we still had to ensure that interactivity and so on was improved, and the learner engagement and so on, to keep an online class. But I don't want to take up more time. I realize we're soon finished. So I just wanted to hear some views on the assessment.
Okay, before you respond to Rory, and it's a very good question, Rory, everybody's grappling with it. I just want to find out who will volunteer to share when we go back to the group. You don't need to share everything, but you can pick a few of the things here and speak to them. Anyone volunteering quickly? Just open your mic and say me. All right, so no volunteers, so I'm going to nominate one person. I'm going to ask Sonia Davidson if she would be willing and available to share.
Good morning, everyone. Have we downloaded the document? Have you downloaded the document that we're going to use? Oh, you can speak in the chat. I am assuming that you're unable to unmute. So we can speak in the chat. So we need to identify someone who will go back to the big group with the presentation. Any takers for that? Please indicate that you're hearing me. One person can indicate that you're hearing me. Are you able to communicate in the chat? Okay, yes. All right, great. So you have the activity there, or do you want me to share my screen? 1 second. Okay, so the document was placed in the chat, and I am going to share my screen with the document so you can all see, but I really need you to go to the chat, download it, or maybe I'll have to get it and place it here for you. Download it so that you can do your own editing. And I really do need you to do your own edits so that you will have something tangible to take back to your institutions. would be a starting point. So I really need you to be able to do that. So you should be seeing my screen now. So you're actually required to take the standards and to think about your own institution. Where are you? You know what you're doing in terms of your planning for the online teaching and learning. You know that your curriculum, your course content, your programs need to be reformatted to fit that online space. Are you doing that? What are you doing about that? The interaction, engagement, the delivery, what are the indicators that the standards are saying, and how many of these indicators do you know that you have within your environment? What is happening in terms of assessment in your environment? Formative assessment, summative assessment, is it being proctored? Are you moving to doing more application-based assessment? Are you working across teams? Services and support, what kind of services are you providing for your faculty? What are you providing for your students? How is it that you intend to move to ensure that everybody can just be seamlessly operating in this modality, whether you opt for blended in the future or for pure online? What are the strengths that you're seeing in your universities? And what are those weaknesses, those areas that are proven to be a challenge? And how do you envision that some of these challenges can be handled? All right, so can we identify someone to do the speaking for this group? That's fine. Arlene, I got that message. Okay, that's fine. So how do you envision going forward with regards to these standards, these criteria? So who is the scribe for this group? Who is going to go back and present for us? Have you been able to access the file from the document? I shared it with everyone. Just click on the link and it should open the document for you. So colleagues, can we all just access the file and let us start working on it? Okay, we do not need to share or open our videos. We can actually go ahead and make the presentation. We know some of us are working from the confines of our home. It is okay, please. We need somebody and we need to start this discussion. We only have 15 minutes to go. Where are we now in terms of planning for online education? How many of us here seeing what the institution is doing and thinking that there is some plan in place as far as teaching and learning is concerned, and it's plan that have been articulated in policy documents, etc.? How many of us are seeing that?
Well, where plans are concerned, I'm able to see it at my location. We would have provided training for our instructors with the use of the LMIS. Additionally, what we do is for every new intake of students that we have, we provide them with an orientation so they too can become comfortable with using the platform. We are also trying to put in policy the security features that we have to ensure that whomever is utilizing the platform is the same person that is doing the assessment. So we have some work to do where that part is concerned, because even, as we're in this session now, when we have some of our online persons, we can't really force them to turn their cameras on. Some persons prefer to work with cameras off. Additionally, in some some instances, persons don't really want to participate in the online session. So we are trying to work and build out how we can make the online sessions more interactive where the students are concerned, but plans are in place.
And you said policies are being drafted.
Yes.
Okay.
And training, we have secure training for our instructors for the LMIS. And also we have for our new intake, what we do is we provide training for them as well, orientation to the platform so that they can be a little bit more comfortable with utilizing the system.
What about the students?
The students are the ones that we do the orientation with. So for every new intake of students,
okay.
During the orientation, they too are exposed to the platform that they'll be using so that we can help to build their confidence and also their competence.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure. We also, we have a department called a learning department, and what they do also is they help with content, with developing content that is suitable for online platform. And so we upload those as well. So some of the resources are already pre-prepared for the instructors and also for the students.
Okay, great.
Sorry, Sandra, it seems that we can now unmute. Earlier when I tried, I couldn't. But it seems that we can now, and I'm seeing that Nicole has a similar statement to what Alicia just said in the chat with respect to the training and so on for facilitators and orientation for students, etc. Policies being drafted.
Okay, great. So I see that for several institutions, things are happening in terms of policies being drafted, training plans, and so on. Can we look now at the curriculum? What have we been doing for the curriculum to be able to transform the curriculum from what the face-to-face environment requires? I know that many schools or many tertiary institutions, they still have that desire to put a 3-hour class online. Is anybody having that experience where it's a 3-hour session online? We are aware that students get frustrated, Zoom bomb, even us as facilitators, we don't want to be in an online session for all of 3 hours and then have another class coming up. So what are the plans? What is happening in terms of the plans for reformatting in the curriculum? Feel free to post in the chat, please. So for the most part, I'm going to assume that we're not fully aware. Those of us here are not fully aware of the plans for reformatting the curriculum.
Well, just that, as I would have mentioned, we have a department that assists us with repurposing the content and putting it on the LMIS for the students and the teachers also to be able to utilize it. So in some of those instances, because the content is repurposed, it is more suitable for the online platform.
Right.
And what we also try to do from my level is we try to encourage the instructors to break. So you can have kind of like when we're in college, you do lectures and tutorials.
Right.
We try to encourage something like that. So you can probably have a 1 hour with them for the lecture, and then you break, you put them in smaller groups online, let them do some work, come back, present, and then you can move away from that kind of live session and have them do some work on the Moodle platform, etc., and upload it at a time convenient to them.
Okay, great. So do you still have that 3 hour or it's now 2 hour?
We try to do 1 hour lecture break, do a little bit of small groups of presentations. So we try not to have them for more than 2 hours straight in that kind of live session.
Okay. Thank you. Interaction, engagement, delivery. How do you interact with the students? Zoom, you talk to them on Zoom, you work with them, Google Meet, you email stuff to them. How are classes facilitated in these environments?
A mixture. So we use, because sometimes for them to use like the Zoom, it can be a little bit expensive. So we try the Zoom, we do the Google Classrooms, we use the Moodle, we use WebEx, we use WhatsApp. Sometimes we have to use some of that. So it's a mixture of things that we use so that we can encourage participation. Where we have apps, we encourage them to download the apps as well, because that will be less expensive for them to use. So those are some of the strategies and platforms that we try using.
Okay, great. We know we're having challenges with assessment. How do we go about the assessment?
Well, this is a real issue for us. Yeah, and as I would have mentioned earlier, for us to determine that the person who is doing the assessment is actually the one who's in the class, it's a problem. Persons don't want to turn on their cameras. Persons have internet connectivity issues, so when they come on to do it, the internet kicks them out and it takes a long time for them to reload, so the time is up and they don't get to do it. What we do sometimes is we give them the settings on the platform. We try to make it so that wherever they are in the test, if they should be bumped off, it would save it. So when they go back on, they can continue from there. So we try to fix the settings accordingly. We give them 2 hours or 3 hours, depending on the time of the assessment, but we don't block it. So we don't say everybody have to go on 9 o'clock and do the assessment, because we know that there are challenges. But once you log on, that is your 2 hour.
Okay.
So we try to adjust the settings to take into consideration everybody and their challenges. There is also a browser. I think it is Safe Browser. I don't remember the name of it, but that's a browser that we're trying to acquire because it has some security features that will help to maintain the integrity of the assessment.
Anyone else want to make any other comments here about the project-based learning, anything like that? Anybody doing project-based learning? I'll just go ahead and put in some project-based assessments, because some of our courses are now portfolio assessment rather than the final exam.
I think, hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, this is Nicole, right? As I said, what we have done is that we have asked our students to give their outline, a complete outline of the project, as well as to do steps of the project within the class, so that we can see their progress. So that's one of the things that we have done to ensure that they are the ones doing the actual tasks.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else? Any other contribution?
There are some notes in the chat about the summative
I'm
being practical.
Thank you. All right, so I think we can see some of the strengths and we can see that we're all transitioning. Let us just go to areas for improvement. What are we doing? How do we see us moving in terms of getting there? We want to get there. How are we going to get there? I'm going to put some things here because I know that we really do need to have those core teams that lead. So we need to have core teams that are au fait with the standards and that are prepared to have meetings and lead the process. Do the assessment of the environment and report the gaps. So for all of us, there are many areas that need improvement, too many to say, but we know what we need to have in place. Anything else? I'm seeing something here in the chat. Time-bound improvement must come with policies, training for lecturers and students, summative assessment. All right, great. Not putting them in any specific place because we're all experiencing challenges. We know that more training is needed for lecturers and students. I think that should go here. All right, I think our breakout room will close anytime soon. So if you have any last minute thing that you want to contribute, please speak now. Who is going to present? Go ahead.
I think Nicole had said she would be willing if nobody else did.
All right, thank you so much, Nicole.
But resources, I think Nicole put as one important area for improvement as well, and I'm sure that's true for most.
Say that again. What's
resources? Nicole had put resources as one of the areas for improvement.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and I think that must be true for many.
Definitely. Yeah. Does any of us see our institution having resources as a strength? Because I don't want to bold it there when some of us do have adequate resources. All right. Any minute now, this session will end. So is there any last minute injection? I'm looking for a safe exam browser so that I can make the correction. Okay, safe exam. I need to put exam, safe exam browser. All right. And of course, some of us are burdened with proctor fees. All right, Nicole, this document is yours. I thank you for presenting what are our strengths. Anybody want to give me a strength right here? Different people are at different places, right? Ensure that you document your processes as you work towards achieving the goals institution. And of course, we have qualified faculty. I think we all have that. We're an intelligent nation, even when we don't use the resource, the human resource. All right, so I think this is it. The countdown to the end of the breakout room. I just got that information. So we'll be leaving the breakout room to go. Yeah, thank you so much for participating. If there is any last minute, and I do expect all of you to come back to the breakout room, to the main room. And Nicole, I am going to ask you to just download again so that you can get the edited document. Unless you had opened it with Google Drive, then you wouldn't have content added.
Oh, okay. No, it's not updated. It's in my drive, but it's not updated.
Right, it wouldn't be updated. All right, so let me just share this with you. All right.
Okay, no problem.
And it's Nicole Williams. All right, so I'm going to be leaving this room to go back to the main room. I suggest we all do that. Go back to the main room and be a part of the discussion there. Thank you for coming into this breakout room. And I hope that you had meaningful engagement here. Thanks.
Okay, good morning again, colleagues, and welcome back to the main room. I trust that your discussions in your breakout groups were fruitful and that you all participated, learned from each other. Just before we go into our question and answer section, the team from UCJ is asking that we open our cameras, turn our cameras on. As many persons as possible, they would like to have a photo shoot of all the persons who would have participated in today's webinar. So could you kindly turn your cameras on so that they can do their photo shoot, and then we will go into our question and answer session. Wonderful. I see persons turning their cameras on. All right, I guess they would need to remove my spotlight. All right. So those responsible for taking the photo shoot, as soon as you're ready, let us know. All right, so somebody's indicating they don't have, okay. All right, wonderful. I'm seeing all the beautiful faces. Great. Person smiling. It's a beautiful day outside, so we have a lot to smile about, right? I am not photogenic, but I'll try my best. So, all right. So the team from UCJ, have you taken our pictures? Can we move on? See some persons fixing up, you know?
Just a few more seconds, thank you.
Okay, all right, just let us know when you're done. And let's put on the best smile that we have, you know?
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone. It was really lovely seeing all those beautiful faces. All right, so based on our program, we are now into our question and answer session. And I'm going to ask that if you have a question, that you either raise your hand or you place it in the chat. Or Sandra, you want me to hand over to you and then we move from there? Sandra and Dr. Moore?
Okay, thank you. There is going to be, there's going to be
go ahead.
Reporting from the breakout room. Schontal, you're going to handle that. Go ahead, please.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to give each group a maximum of 3 minutes to do your presentation. I know you won't pick everything that was discussed, but just some highlights, and you go ahead and share. So we want to begin with the group from the teacher colleges. Can you go ahead, engage the video, and or the presenter can show video and you can go ahead and share screen. Teacher colleges first.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Are you asking me to share the screen or should someone else share?
Do you have the material to share?
I do.
So please go ahead and share screen, yes.
All right, let me see. All right.
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right, so my name is Nicole Williams and I'm from St. Joseph's Teachers College. And the Teachers Colleges, we brainstormed to fill in the criteria that's here for reporting. So where are we now? We recognize that we do have some policies in place. Some persons are working on their policies as it relates to online and distance learning, as it relates to policies as it relates to internet usage and that sort of stuff. As it relates to the curriculum, for those of us who belong to the TCG, we recognize that as one of our where we are now is that we are not necessarily able to manipulate the curriculum as much as we would have wanted to. However, there has been some integration from the TCG as relates to tweaking the curriculum to meet online and distance learning. Also, we have looked at the way we deal with our hours, and we have broken up our 3-hour platforms or scheduled time for teaching to facilitate asynchronous learning and other activities. Also, as it relates to engaging our students, we have been conducting studies and meaningful sessions and focus groups. So some persons have been looking at their own little internal self-study. We have used the different platforms and different techniques to engage the students as well. We have been looking at different methods of assessment. We have treated formative assessment one way, differently from how we have been looking at summative assessment. For formative assessment, we ensure that much of the work is presented to the facilitator prior to the end result so that we can see that the process or the progress is that of the student. For some institutions, summative assessments online are done on the at the institutions where the facility and the resources allow. For support, as we say, we have been looking at giving students the allotted time to do the necessary work and looking at the using the safe browser and that sort of stuff. We do have several challenges and weaknesses, however. We have looked at the fact that we need additional resources, we need to get the policies in place, we need persons who are au fait with the standards. We also know that we need our evaluation and monitoring teams to deal with these things. So we do have weaknesses, as we say, weaknesses in the curriculum, in the sense that we are not necessarily able as an institution to manipulate some of the documents ourselves or to tweak them ourselves because we belong to a consortium. Also, as it relates to our lecturers, we still need additional training, and even for our students as well. Assessment, we still also need the necessary resources in place to ensure that the assessments are
Okay, so there's a break in transmission there. Anyone else from the group can pick up and continue?
Oh, I did not know that I was muted. Oh my God.
Just for a moment, so you can now continue.
Okay, where was I?
Probably just continue with the point that you were making. I think we're good.
Okay, so I was looking at the matter of assessment as one of our weaknesses, to say that we do need to put in the necessary resources to ensure that assessment is being done authentically. And when I said authentic assessment, not necessarily the technique, as I was saying before, but authentic, to ensure that it's being done by the students. And so we look at those as also our not just weaknesses, but also areas where we need improvement, ensuring that we have training for all our students and the necessary support in terms of human resource and setting up the necessary human resource mechanisms for students to get assistance, and also for lecturers to get assistance as well. So those are some of the things that we looked at as to where we are, where we're going, what our strengths and our weaknesses.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nicole, for sharing on behalf of the Teacher Colleges group. Very interesting, and I note some areas that came out in terms of assessment and training, and it would be interesting to see if some of those, are the same across the other two categories. All right, so let's now turn our attention to the teacher colleges, not teacher colleges, the community colleges and the university colleges. Presenter, please go ahead. For senior screen, Sonia, you can go ahead now and use your mic. Okay, Sonia, we're not hearing you if you're talking.
Yes, sorry about that. I had a little challenge there.
No problem, it happens, it's technology. Go right ahead.
Okay, so our little huddle with the university colleges and community colleges, we found that the experiences were similar in a number of respects, and also there were some slight differences. For those of us who had an online modality before the lockdown, the transition was a little bit smoother. And for those who didn't have the online, then there came all the challenges of trying to get everybody up to speed, the students up to speed as to what's expected, and of course the issues with providers, connectivity, losing power, all of that. And of course the faculty who now had to be reorienting themselves from standing in front of a classroom to now engaging with students who were out there in the airwaves. So we brought some of that together to the table as to what were the challenges and so on, what's happening now. For many of us, the strengths involve the fact that we had faculty who were willing to get in the game and make the necessary changes, were willing to get the training sessions in, and we found that that worked very well in order to get things streamlined. Many of us were able to have the classes recorded, whether through Zoom or Google Meets. And this also helped the students to be able to go back and refresh themselves as to what was covered and the learning outcomes that were expected. There is incorporation of materials from YouTube and other appropriate academic sources to give the students more to work with, since we're not in an intimate setting with them in a classroom. So as much as possible has been provided to students to make sure that they're able to grasp the material from different angles and to be able to meet the learning outcomes. One thing that worked for UCC was insisting on the teaching plan being provided to the students at the beginning of the semester so that everybody knew what was going to be covered. And as Sandra said, there was no need to be reading slides during class time. The students had the materials, they knew what topic was being covered each week, and so they were able to read ahead. And then the classroom becomes now, how do we apply this content? What are the practical examples? Share your experiences so that others in the class get an idea of what's really happening in the real world. The engagement involves asking learners to keep cameras on, but we know how that is. Some people don't want their background shown. Some people don't have a camera. So there are challenges there to try and really ascertain whether or not the students are engaged. Yes, they've signed in, but we don't know if they're there. Sometimes you call on a student and you're calling the name and nobody is responding to you. So you realize that this is someone who is a ghost in the class and just there signed in for registration or for the attendance, and it's not happening. So that's a challenge that many of us face. How do we know that the persons who are in the class are really there and actively engaged? Then came the issue of Google, where you see the students just going and searching Google and they pick up anything off Google and bring it back to you in their assignments or their assessments. And how do we channel them to the correct academic resources? So one of the things that was mentioned is that the library becomes very important here to help students to have access to journal databases, articles, and so on that represent appropriate academic resources, and that they're just not searching any .com website and saying that, oh, they have this information from there. The support technical is there because the students, some of them not tech savvy, so that is also important. And many of us have found that we have to put in a tech team to support the students and the faculty as well. Improvements, training, both for the students and for the facilitators. because we have to get a change in mindset that it's not just about just replicating what used to happen in a face-to-face class and here it comes over in online. It needs to be more engaging, making use of the technology, getting the students on board with the technology as well as the facilitators. And then of course, bringing that over into the critical thinking and not the plagiarism that is widespread, where they just go cut and paste. And when you're reading the assignment, you say, but we don't speak like this. So you know that this is definitely a cut and paste from the internet and they think it's fine, but it's not fine because they're not learning that way. And they're not developing the critical thinking skills using that method. And so for assessments, it's about trying to use STEAM or STEM to get the students to really engage and use their thinking skills, apply what they have been reading, apply what is discussed in class, and so they can bring it out in real life. We still have a challenge with our network providers, but it is what it is, and we have to work with that as best as possible and see how we can improve as we go forward. We know that going forward, things are not going to be the same as in lockdown. Many of our students will remain online because of the convenience, and we have to be prepared for that. Even though some of us may go back to face-to-face, as I know UCC has a plan to bring back a few face-to-face classes starting in September, we know that the students, many of the students are converted because of the convenience of the online platform and the facilitators too. Many of mine have told me they want to remain online, but we have to see how to juggle it and make sure that there is a balance and a blended approach to learning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia. And we see the continuity there in terms of the training and definitely in terms of assessment. I like the emphasis on critical thinking skills of the students and how those skills will have to be exercised when they work in the online environment, because it's not just about cutting and pasting. It's not just about, you know, claiming as their own. So we have to do some sessions around values, you know, values education. We have to beef up some more the bit about academic integrity. So we see that coming out a lot. All right, thanks. Let's move on now to our third and final group, the universities. The presenter, please go ahead. Sonia, you could stop sharing so that the next person can share, do the screen share.
Yes, I'm trying to do that. I've got myself in a little problem here. There goes.
You did it. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Valerie McKenzie, and I will be presenting for a group. Now, I am not gonna go over everything that my other colleagues had gone over, but I'm just gonna be brief. There's nothing that I will be presenting. And we discussed quite a lot because we discussed our present situation where we are now. And a lot came out, and we're from different institutions. So of course, a lot came out. And what we find out that even for some, they were already online and fully online with some of their programs. And for others, you know, it was not so. So we did look at that planning. What did we do when we say we're talking about planning? And not going through what the others had gone through. However, our thinking was that, yes, we had experienced 2 years or two to 3 years of COVID, of moving on online. And then what we're doing now is to just look at where we are. We're looking back, and from there we can move on. We can make that transition to where we really want to be. So we're looking at, you know, all of the things that is affecting us, well, the things that are affecting us, the challenges, the technological challenges, the accessibility, the availability of technology and all of that. And not just that, but the readiness, of course, because that played really a very important, and that is playing a very important role in how, in our planning. When we talk about the format of the curriculum or the curricula, right? We looked at face-to-face and how moving online, the changes that needs to be made in the curriculum. And I remember one person pointed out, we talk about changes in the curriculum. We also need to speak about, this morning you talk about launching the accreditation standards for online, yes. And where do we find ourselves with that? Is it that we're gonna have, is it a blended accreditation we'll be using, or an online accreditation, or whatever, seeing that our courses are now mixed? What will, you know, something work for you that is not applicable to me? And what about when we have our institutions with the different programs? How do we go about that? We talk about engaging our students. We look at the educational technologies, and one person had mentioned Padlet, and there are other educational technologies that we are currently using. However, we also looked at, yes, the strengths, but we looked at the challenges as well, because we find that the students are, they might love it, but outside of the classroom, they're not engaging. They're not interacting with these technologies that we, you know, that we introduce to them, those technologies. And, you know, one of the suggestions was we have to make them use the tech, spare some time that they use the technology mainly in class, because outside of class, they really don't use it. Learning styles was another thing when we talk about assessment, right? So we, you know, the learning styles would be a factor, and the readiness would be a factor as well. The services and support, and there was one person who particularly talk about policy being a major, policy and training being major in when we talk about services and support for students, and not just students, but also for faculties. And we recognize that additional policies were needed. We looked at in the community itself, where possibly there could be an extension of the Noise Abatement Act, seeing that persons are working from home and students are there at home, and, you know, so all of the noise interference there. So we talk, you know, looking at additional policies, and yes, using the policies that we have. One of the policies, yes, when we talk about interaction, I think there was one institution that is using the policy, seeing the learner in a synchronous environment. You ask that they turn their cameras on. However, how will that work in a very large class, right? How will that work in a very large class? And, you know, one person spoke about the authenticity, who they are, right? Knowing who your students are and promoting the responsibility. And we look again, how do we promote the responsibility? And that person had given some information, some examples, and I don't know if he is able to say anything now. I think it was Christopher Newton had given some examples of how, you know, promoting responsibility. I think that is that in a nutshell. Yes, but we talk about assessing, evaluate and implementing the outcomes, and do capacity development and building and workshops and so on. So that's it in a nutshell from us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Valerie. A very engaging discussion happened in your group, just like in the others. And it would be good for these documents to be shared. So in the chat space, I have put in there the email address to whom you can send your documents to, so that the documents can be compiled and, you know, made available. So I would really appreciate that. So now we're going to open the floor for questions, answers from us, the UCJ Distance Education Standards Committee members. Anyone can jump in to address questions which are aired and raised. So if you do have a question now, just go ahead and raise your virtual hand, and we will take the questions in the order in which they are raised. Over to you, Ritu.
Yes, I'm here monitoring.
Thanks. Questions or comments about the standards on which we presented today. Also on the presentations, anything that you would like to firm up or interrogate a little bit more, now is a good time to do that. Okay, Devon.
Okay. All right, let me put my hand up.
Morning. All right, I joined in a little bit later than usual today. Just checking though, I'll look at the standards as it relates to infrastructure. How do we mitigate against the challenge with IT infrastructures within institutions and those available to students based on the challenges that we've discovered, particularly on the onset of the pandemic? I know, you know my history, Dr. Moore, that we've been in this before it has gotten so popular. And then we had some strategies that were used then, but what we have morphed into since the pandemic is a lot different, where we had mass online learning versus those of us who chose to study online.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sandra, would you like to field that question about infrastructure? How do we mitigate against those challenges?
Okay, thank you so much for your question. There are not many things that we can do as far as the technology, the infrastructure is concerned. The institutions will have to expend the funds to ensure that we have greater bandwidth and the resources, the technological resources that we need to have. Coming from a government perspective, we need to ensure that the necessary service that we're paying for, the ISP, the service providers, they will have to step up to give us what we are paying for, truly give us. As we're here connected, we would have recognized that several times persons, we're not hearing anymore. We're seeing blurred images coming across, and it's not the computer. If you can see and you can hear at the beginning, then there should be no distortion throughout. But we know our challenges as far as the ISPs in Jamaica are concerned, and that is where a lot of effort will have to be expended. The government will have to ensure that the Flow, the Digicel, and all those who are providing internet service do a better job. Thank you.
Thanks. And additional, Sandra, I'd want to say the institutions have a responsibility to the learners to make sure that the learners can come on campus if they have that kind of problem with infrastructure at home, or they can't afford credit for data plans and so on. Institutions need to have a ready space for students to be able to access, and maybe even in terms of providing support, financial support where necessary, where it, for example, if another pandemic comes where persons are locked in and they cannot travel, then institutions need to budget a certain amount for needy students to be able to access. So just some of those things to think about, right?
Okay, I'm seeing a raised hand from Christopher Newton.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, loud and clear.
In our group, we had a brief discussion on some issues that the promotion of which would make online delivery more meaningful and rigorous. And they include the promotion of responsibility, authenticity, and presence within the online classroom. And so the question was asked, and since we didn't get a chance to discuss it in our group, I thought we might just throw it out here. How do we promote responsibility within the online context? It's a question.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Christopher.
That's a very good question.
All right, I'll jump in and then Sandra or others can respond as well. How do you promote authenticity, integrity, and responsibility in the online classroom? Wonderful question, and it's something with which we all grapple. And I think what will be useful here is if persons can type in the chat space what they do in their own classrooms or in their institution to, promote this. So for me, I think it has to begin with the planning at the stage of, planning for teaching and learning. I think you need to have very clear course outlines that entail a kind of contractual obligation to students so that students know from the outset what are their expectations, and if these expectations are not met, what kind of penalties or policies will apply. So I think we need to think through the full range of possibilities that could persons or learners would have in mind in terms of violating integrity and responsibility, and put those out and talk about what are the pros and cons of actions. Secondly, I think it has to do with the nature of the facilitator. Facilitators really cannot be those kinds of persons who say one thing but they don't enforce. They are more like pushovers in the online space. You have to maintain an online presence that speaks to a certain standard so that your learners, your students will know what is it that my facilitator stands for, and will know the degree of step that you can take or not take with the facilitator. So you have to maintain that online presence and be consistent with it, so that learners will know how to treat with you, how to engage with you and your course within the semester. And the final thing for me has to do with the nature of the assessment. The kind of assessment that is, someone can just go to Google, copy paste it and bring it back to you is not ideal for online learning. You're not going to see learning happening. You're just going to see the best example of cheating. So the teacher or the facilitator has to think through the assessment and think through it in a way that is more application-based rather than, regurgitation, just a call and response. So you need to make it more application. You need to get students to look at their particular life context and take that life context and apply to learning. And I think too, offering alternative pathways to the assessment, not necessarily one option for students, but different degrees of students will need, different pathways. And also you need to institute a kind of, where you support the assessment. So it's not just the traditional type where you give the assessment today and then students submit it 3 weeks from today and you don't ever engage with it again. It can't be like that. I think you need to build moments over the 3 weeks where you get drafts and you get to see how the student is developing and evolving the assignment, and even a brief acknowledgement, get peer critique involved. You don't have to look at every stage of the 3 weeks, but you need to see that students are doing something so that by the time week 3 comes along, you can know that this is a student, work. And the thing is, many times I say an online learner who farms out his or her work to someone else, the person who will take that on will be someone who is planning to spend the 13 weeks of the semester with the course. And not many people want to spend 13 weeks, going through materials and thinking through to be able to produce an assignment. You have to, as a facilitator, create a kind of assignment which builds on previous knowledge week by week, so that anybody who an online learner will ask to do the assignment will be turned off from taking it on, because it will mean going through the 13 weeks of the course. So those are my bits of suggestions about how you can assign and maintain responsibility and facilitate, authenticity in the classroom, the online classroom. Thanks.
Okay,
I just want to add to that, the policing, many of us in our institution try to come up with ways to catch them, but it's not the policing that is going to work. It is, as I see somebody wrote in the chat, multiple assessment methods throughout the course, and they're available. It's portfolio-based assessment, it's competence-based, and as Schontal was saying, we need to build on assessment. Nobody should be able to come in at the end and just do a piece and yeah, that's it. So those are some of the things we can put in many policing strategies and policies, but it's not always going to catch them. We need to ensure that we stay ahead of them. All right, thank you.
Okay, we have another raised hand from Brian Wallace. Go ahead, sir.
Greetings, Dr. Moore, greetings, colleagues. I noticed that based on the standards that have been established for online education, there will be a great need to make the distinction then between what is blended modality and what is just digitally assisted learning in the standards. And so I would like to know, even for the purposes of accreditation, how will the UCJ decide that this is online and this is just digitally assisted learning? Do we have to do digitally assisted learning in the same space, or can it also be done in a different environment? One person could be here in Jamaica, and student in the US, can digitally assisted learning still work? This is something I think we will need to clearly outline, especially for the purposes of accreditation, that what we assess is really online and not just digitally assisted in that sense.
Okay, thank you for your thoughtful question. Let me respond to you quickly. The distance education standard, it does not necessarily cover assisted or distance online hybrid. It covers any modality, and that is why it is labeled as the distance education standards. So what we seek to do is to help you to establish a path to whatever it is that you want to get to. So if you are doing distance education, if you're doing hybrid or assisted, what you need to do is to ensure that the documentation within your institution provides for the learners to get the same experience regardless of where they are and what you are integrating them in. You want to ensure that they are supported wherever they are. All right, so it is for you to document what it is that you are delivering and to use the standards as a guide to where you need to get to. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms.
We can take one or two more questions.
No, I am told that we need to stop the question and answer session because we need to start the next session at 1 o'clock.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask those, I saw another question in the chat. I'll make a note of it. And then what we could do is in the session in the afternoon, we could respond at that time. Is that okay?
That should be fine.
All right, so Vanessa Leon, I saw your hand. Could you just post your question in the chat, and then we'll respond later. All right, thanks very much to Dr. Schontal Moore and Ms. Sandra Bloomfield for their presentation and for leading out in the breakout room session. We really appreciate your presentations this morning and now this afternoon. At this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. Althea Heron, the Executive Director of the University Council of Jamaica, to give her vote of thanks. Mrs. Heron.
Thank you very much, Ritva. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased that you took time out this morning to participate in this workshop. I am actually heartened. At one stage, I think I saw over 150 persons logging on, and we are now down to 127. So it is really good that you have stayed the course, and it shows that you have been engaged. I sincerely hope that you found it very enriching and rewarding. Any clarity that you needed in terms of the standards and how you would want to implement these standards and have your programs aligned. I remember in Quality Assurance Week 2021, when your stakeholders participated in the discourse looking at the, we treated it as a consultation, And so we solicited your feedback, and we went through each standard, getting your feedback on each standard in various breakout rooms. And this morning was no different, only that this time now we are now walking you through the implementation and how you would interpret it. So again, I would like to thank each and every stakeholder, representative of an institution. I really am grateful for you being here, for the feedback that you had provided then and now, as well as based on the responses and the participation in the breakout room session, then I know that you have been assimilating what has been presented. A special thanks to the Standards Committee members. Without them, we could not develop standards. This morning, I'd like to thank our chairperson, Mrs. Ritwa Smith, who has excellently navigated and carried us through the course this morning. Special thanks to Dr. Schontal Moore for her presentation, as well as to Ms. Sandra Bloomfield. Now, all of what we have been doing right now, yes, goes to the credit of the Standards Committee, but more so Ms. Sandra Bloomfield, who has been working with the various presenters in terms of what it is that we be presenting and how we should present, and the type of information that it is critical for us to share with you, our stakeholders. So could we just, in the reaction button, there's a thumbs up, there is a clap hand. So could we all just share our expression of gratitude to the Standards Development Committee, please? I'd also like to use the opportunity to thank Dr. Jeanette Bartley-Bryan, who was the chairperson for this particular standards development for the committee, and bringing all the various stakeholders and institutional representation on the committee to helping us to revise. Because this is not the first distance education standards. We had a previous document which was published in 2015, but because of the fact that we all had to pivot into an online setting, and I know a lot of you used what was there before to help you to implement. And so bearing in mind that the technology has been changing, there's various services. What happened during COVID perhaps didn't exist when the standards was developed in 2015. And so this revised standards now is more robust to help you improve on your internal quality assurance systems at your institutions. So many, many thanks to the Standards Development Committee. And before I close, I would also like to thank Dr. Yvonne Dawkins for invoking the presence of the Lord in this session, as well as the UCJ team. The UCJ team. If you notice, this was a short, we gave a short notice for this workshop. Yes, I'm glad you responded to the short notice, but it was also a short time in which we had to prepare. And so I am grateful that the UCJ team, as always, have rallied around the cause and have ensured that we are able to host this series of workshops. Now, special thanks again and commendations to Mrs. Karen Gale, who is our Senior Standards Development Officer. And this session, we had the launch on Friday, had a workshop on Friday. Today's workshop and the one in the afternoon, all of this could not have happened without the assistance of the Commonwealth of Learning. And I would now, and in this regard, I'm thanking Dr. Mariette Newman, who is the education specialist at the Commonwealth of Learning, for getting that organization to partner with us so that we can have this these series of workshops going for our institutions. So I have listened, I have heard the questions. I know that you all have participated and that you have found these sessions very, very enlightening. And so again, I thank you all for your support and your participation. And I'm also looking forward to you being online at 1 o'clock when we have the third workshop. So have a good lunch and come back energized for another session.